Chapter 73. She was found out. Qin Wenru was not surprised. Although there was no one in the yard, it didn't mean that there was no one around. She came here to find him, and she was relieved to see him still here. He was indeed in the farm near Jingxin Monastery. Child. Qin Wenru walked to Chu Luchen, stopped, and bowed to him respectfully. What's the matter? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and opened his eyes. It seemed that he was not surprised that she could find him here, and he turned over the railing of his chair. Xiao Xuanzi came out of nowhere with a small stool in his hand, and he put it in front of Chu Luchen. Chu Luchen raised his eyes and glanced at the stool playfully. Qin Wenru sat down sensibly. She was originally short, and after sitting down, she naturally became shorter. She blinked her eyes and had to raise her head to look up at Chu Luchen. She remembered that when she stood just now, she was looking down at him. Child, I have something. Qin Wenru thought for a while, and thought it was better to come straight to the point. Her words were interrupted by Chu Luchen carelessly. Don't you feel that you have a lot of things to do, and I can't help you all with all of them? Child, it's different this time. Qin Wenru bit her lips, and her eyes fell on the medical book, and she was quite resentful. If he didn't take away her book, she wouldn't have this trouble this time. Do you want this book? Chu Luchen raised his hand and asked when he saw her eager look. Child, this book is mine. Qin Wenru raised her watery eyes, looked at Chu Luchen and stated. So, you plan to... Chu Luchen closed the book, patted on the railing of the chair twice, and squinted at her indifferently. So, I want to ask Child to return this book to me. Qin Wenru blinked her watery eyes, and braced herself to look at him. What if I don't want to? Chu Luchen smiled, and his appearance was peerless, but did this kind of domineering behavior really fit his identity? Qin Wenru was quite speechless. Child, this book is mine. Qin Wenru stated again. So. Chu Luchen put down his hand, stretched out a hand, and maliciously pulled a strand of her hair. Her hair was very soft and comfortable to touch. Chu Luchen now wanted to touch her hair when he saw it. Even if he couldn't touch it, it would be good to pull it. Her hair was very similar to the cat he raised. They both had soft hair. Naturally, he pulled her away without hesitation. Ouch! Qin Wenru did not expect that he would pull her hair so badly. She screamed and hurriedly reached out to pat his hand. Chu Liuchen's hand nimbly slid past her hand and pinched her slightly puffed little face. He was in a good mood and laughed. This girl is really interesting. He loved to see her look like she was angry and annoyed, but couldn't do anything to him. Just like at this moment, her upper lip was slightly puckered, and her cherry lips were tightly pursed. Her cheeks were puffed up as if she was about to blow bubbles out of anger. This feeling was really interesting. Child, what do you want to do to return it to me? Qin Wenru subconsciously reached out to pat his hand again. Of course, she didn't pat his hand. She looked around and simply put the small stool back to stay away from Chu Luchen. Then she sat down again and asked, Where is the seal? Seeing her pull the small stool, Chu Luchen didn't stop her. He seemed to be in a very good mood. What's wrong? Qin Wenru immediately sat up straight and said warily, Give it to me. Chu Luchen said lazily. That's what I got when I helped you take care of the Tang Chenyan, Qin Wenru said. Has the Tang Chenyan blossomed? How was the care? Chu Luchen raised his handsome eyebrows and squinted at her with a meaningful look. His question made Qin Wenru speechless and a little guilty. The flower didn't blossom, nor did it die. But it didn't look very energetic. When she went up the mountain, she specially asked Nanny Yu to take care of the Tang Chenyan. She didn't know how it was now. The soil here is not very good. After thinking for a while, Qin Wenru explained anxiously in her heart. Does it mean that it will get better when we arrive in the capital? Chu Luchen said with a smile. His words made Qin Wenru more anxious, and she secretly complained in her heart. She had thought that this master would just play with it for a few days and then give it back to him. Whether it lived or died had nothing to do with her. Your Highness, you don't intend to raise this flower by yourself? You can raise it for me. Chu Luchen reached out and touched his chin with a playful look, as if it was a matter of course. As long as you raised the Tang Chenyan blossomed. Therefore, she had to raise it until it died. She had to raise it to be energetic and beautiful. Qin Wanru felt very stressed. She bit her lips and her long eyelashes fluttered twice. She lowered her head and looked unhappy. Then, what about my medical book? After thinking for a while, Qin Wanru said helplessly. Anyway, it didn't die. Maybe there would be a time when it blossomed. She could raise it slowly. Give me the seal, Chu Luchen said in a relaxed and natural manner with a little tiredness in his eyes. Okay, I will give you the seal. Qin Wanru just hesitated for a moment and immediately agreed. Then she asked tentatively, what about the flower? You also have to raise the flower well, otherwise how can you get the seal? Chu Luchen said persistently. Therefore, the seal still belonged to him. He still had to help him raise the Tang Chenyan, which was very difficult to raise, into a flower. In exchange, he would get his medical book. This medical book originally belonged to him, but it was stolen by him. He used his own things to exchange for her to do things for him. Moreover, it seemed that she took advantage of him. It seemed that she exchanged one seal for two things of him. Qin Wanru felt very aggrieved, really aggrieved. But she was determined to get this medical book. Okay, Your Highness, don't worry. I will remember it. The flower will grow well for you. Qin Wanru said. She didn't believe that she really couldn't raise it well. At the worst, she could go to the capital city and hire a capable gardener. It was just a pot of flower. Okay. Chu Luchen seemed to be very satisfied with this and said with a smile. Although he looked young, Qin Wanru felt that he was like a fox that had become a demon. A black-bellied male demon. Then please give me the book, Your Highness. Taking a deep breath, Qin Wanru put away the resentment in her watery eyes and said with a serious face. You also give it to me? Chu Luchen also reached out a hand. His expression was exactly the same as Qin Wanru's. He even felt a little aggrieved, as if he was the one who was bullied. He looked at her with a little doubt and said, Do you want to get something for nothing? Qin Wanru repeatedly told herself not to be angry and not to be angry. She secretly gritted her teeth and swallowed her anger. Your Highness, what do you want? The seal? Don't tell me you didn't bring it with you. You won't put away such an important thing casually. Chu Luchen looked up and down Qin Wanru, as if he was looking for where she was hiding. His words made Qin Wanru's face turn red. Why don't you want to take it out? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows. Want it now? Qin Wanru gritted her teeth and looked around. Don't tell me you still want to owe me? I have suffered such a loss, but you still did such a thing. It's too much. Chu Luchen complained. Qin Wanru was sweating. Is this man a drama queen? Chu Luchen complained. He made it seem like she was a scum who abandoned his wife and son. I'll go to the room to get it. Qin Wanru suddenly stood up and couldn't stand it anymore. She couldn't unbutton her collar outside because it was hanging on her neck. Chu Luchen didn't make it difficult for her this time. He smiled and waved his hand, indicating that she could go into the room. Qing Yu followed Qin Wanru into the room and helped her to unbutton her collar. She took out the seal hanging on her neck and helped her to fasten the button again. When everything was done, Qin Wanru returned to the yard with Qing Yu. She handed over the seal in her hand and said unhappily, Here you are. Chu Luchen reached out his hand with a smile. Qin Wanru suddenly withdrew her hand and asked, Prince, when are you going to give it back to me? This seal was very important to her and she would never give it up. Look at the flower. Chu Luchen seemed to be in a good mood and his beautiful eyebrows were relaxed. What if the flower doesn't bloom? Qin Wanru thought it was better to ask clearly. Then this seal is this king's. Chu Luchen smiled ambiguously. He didn't rush to reach out his hand at this time. He leaned back and lay down leisurely, not anxious or impatient. He was really stubborn. Prince, what do you want the seal for? Is it of no use to you? Qin Wanru laughed dryly and said, This Prince Chen was so difficult to deal with. She almost felt dizzy because he didn't get dizzy after going round and round. But she really didn't understand why Chu Luchen would care about her. Whether it's of use or not, I know. Chu Luchen looked at her and saw her slightly pouted mouth. A trace of leisure flashed in his beautiful eyes. His words were quite meaningful. He reached out and patted the medical book in his hand twice. Don't you want this book? Yes. Qin Wenru knew he was threatening her with the medical book, but she had to accept the threat. She gritted her teeth and tightly held the seal in her hand to give it to him. In Qin Wenru's reluctant eyes, Chu Luchen elegantly reached out and took the seal. He shook it in front of his eyes and glanced at Qin Wenru proudly. Then he pushed the medical book to Qin Wenru and said, "Here you are." Seeing that the medical book was almost pushed to the ground, Qin Wenru hurriedly reached out to take it. "This medical book is good. I wonder who gave it to you?" Chu Luchen asked casually. Qin Wenru was afraid of breaking the medical book. She lowered her head and looked through it carefully. She didn't notice the dim light in his eyes when he said this. She just said casually, "It was given by the master of Jingshin Monastery." "You want to learn medical skills from the master of Jingshin Monastery?" Chu Luchen looked at the little head in front of him. He didn't control his hand and reached out to pull the two buns of her hair. It hurts." Qin Wenru didn't raise her head. She reached out and patted the position of the hand that was messing around on her head. Chapter 74. Not the abbess of Jingshin Monastery, but the junior sister of Jingshin Monastery. Qin Wenru didn't slap the messy hand on her head and answered casually. She had achieved her goal here, so she naturally stood up and said goodbye. "You're leaving now?" Chu Luchen asked with a smile. He seemed to be in a good mood and was easy to talk to. Of course, it was just a look. "Is there anything else, child?" Qin Wenru probed carefully. "I'm fine. It's just that if you have something to do, you will come to me later." Chu Luchen sighed with a gentle and harmless smile. If Qin Wenru didn't have any contact with him before, she would definitely think so too. "I have something to do later?" Qin Wenru blinked her eyes and didn't know whether he was serious or joking. "I don't know. I'm tired and I'm going to sleep. I didn't sleep well last night, and my arm hurts too." Chu Luchen closed his eyes and immediately changed from an elegant and handsome young man to a sickly and handsome young man. Qin Wenru blushed and stared at Chu Luchen with shame and anger. She turned around and left with shame and anger. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she might not be able to control herself and hit this sickly and handsome young man. Of course, she was just thinking about it. Hearing the footsteps leaving in a hurry, Chu Luchen opened his eyes. There was a clear smile on his pale lips with a little bit of tiredness of a young man. "Child, Her Highness asks you to come back to the capital city. There's a letter." A guard hurriedly turned around from the dark corner outside the room and presented a letter respectfully. "I won't read it," Chu Luchen said lightly. Although there was still a smile on his face, it seemed to be chilling to the bones. Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly lowered his head and looked at his nose and mouth, motionless as if he was a wooden man. "But Her Highness has something important to tell you." Feeling the chilling atmosphere in the air, the guard didn't dare to raise his head. His slender and white fingers reached over and picked up the letter in the guard's hand. The guard heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Finally, this child was willing to read the letter, and he could finally report to his people. But the next moment, the relaxed expression froze on his face. He heard the sound of paper tearing and the gentle words of the young man, "Tell her to give up. Now that you're putting in so much effort, what were you doing earlier? I really can't tell that she actually has such a motherly heart." These words were very gentle, but with the meaning in these words, there was a gloomy and bloodthirsty atmosphere. The guard could no longer stand and knelt down with a plop sound. Chu Luchen waved his hand and said impatiently, "Go back and tell her that I won't die for the time being. Tell her not to pretend to care about me for no reason. I'm not a 3-year-old child who can be fooled by her." After that, he turned his head, picked up a handkerchief to cover his mouth, and coughed violently. Xiao Xuanzi immediately panicked. He hurried over and gently patted his back. "Master, are you okay? Don't worry. Take your time." Chu Luchen continued to cough, and it seemed that he couldn't stop for a while. "Hurry up and go down." Xiao Xuanzi gently patted Chu Liuchen's back and shouted at the guard who was still kneeling. The guard didn't dare to say anything more, and hurriedly left. After the guard left, Chu Luchen coughed for a long time before he stopped. Xiao Xuanzi brought him warm water, and he drank a few mouthfuls before he recovered. Master, are you okay? Xiao Xuanzi looked worried. I'm okay, I won't die. Chu Liuchen's lips curved up with a touch of sarcasm. His lips were as pale as white paper, and anyone could see that he was not in good condition. Master, let's ask the master of Jingxin Monastery to come and see you, okay? Maybe she's the person we're looking for, and the Dr. Qi mentioned is also in this area. Xiao Xuanzi advised. He had actually advised several times these days. Since the master of Jingxin Monastery might be the person they were looking for, why didn't his master come to see her? The longer this body was delayed, the worse it would be. What's the hurry? Chu Luchen finally stopped coughing. He touched his head, which was a little painful due to coughing, and leaned back heavily on the lounge chair. Master, the earlier the better. Xiao Xuanzi came to him and gently rubbed his forehead. He knew that every time he coughed violently, he would feel dizzy and headache for a while. If I recover, others will worry about me. It's not bad to live like this. He murmured in a low voice, but it was enough for Xiao Xuanzi to hear it clearly. Master? Xiao Xuanzi's eyes were red, and he was very worried. Are you really going to keep playing like this? Of course I'm going back. Chu Luchen said lightly, lying there with a calm face. There was no emotion in his voice, not a bit of joy or anger. Hearing that his master was going back, Xiao Xuanzi was relieved. He was really afraid that his master would just abandon himself like this, neither finding a doctor for him nor returning to the capital city. Thinking that if he continued like this, his master would probably die outside, Xiao Xuanzi felt that his heart was about to break into pieces. When are you going back, master? Xiao Xuanzi wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and asked. How many Fenghua glazed lamps have you found? Chu Luchen didn't answer the question. In the sunlight, his eyelashes were very long and curly, which made his face look almost transparent and pale, extremely sick. There are already 7 or 8 of them. Xiao Xuanzi answered. Although Fenghua glazed lamps were precious, there were actually many of them. When he passed by the capital city and came to Jiangzhou, he had collected 7 or 8. Master, do you want to check them carefully? No, I don't have anyone to help me. It's good enough to find these few. Does anyone really expect me to find anything? Chu Luchen said lightly. The Fenghua glazed lamp in Ningyuan Army General's mansion was originally an accident. He just blew up the little girl casually. He didn't expect that there really was one, and it didn't look like those Fenghua glazed lamps before. It was really an accident, but he didn't intend to tell anyone about this accident. So what if it was an accident or not? Who was afraid? Originally, this matter was just an excuse. No one expected him to accomplish anything. They probably hoped that he would die outside. That would be the end of all troubles. Master, I think second Miss Qin looks like her. Xiao Xuanzi was Chu Liuchen's henchman, so he naturally knew what excuse Chu Luchen used to leave the capital city this time. It doesn't matter whether she looks like her or not. Ningyuan Army General's daughter is also good. Chu Luchen curved his lips. His face, which was pale just now, looked a little more lively because of his smile. He didn't look like a handsome young man in an ink painting, who was beautiful but not lively. Master, you can ignore this matter, but what about your own matter? The Empress Dowager has been urging you for a long time, and even the Emperor. So, you have to think about it. Xiao Xuanzi gently rubbed Chu Liuchen's forehead and reminded him softly. Since they were going back to the capital city, that troublesome matter must be sent to his master again. Of course, I will think about it. Chu Luchen smiled. Even if he didn't open his eyebrows and eyes were curved. The handsome young man of 14 or 15 was so beautiful that he didn't look like a real person. At this moment, Xiao Xuanzi secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Even if he didn't look like a real person, his master was still the best looking. Moreover, his master smiled like this, which meant that he had a well-thought-out plan. Master, do you want to ask the master of Jingxin Monastery to treat your illness? Seeing that he was in a good mood, Xiao Xuanzi immediately suggested. But Chu Luchen didn't refuse this time. Then I will arrange it now. Xiao Xuanzi said excitedly. You don't have to do it, just let Qin Huaiyong do it. Chu Luchen casually ordered. As long as Chu Luchen was willing to see a doctor, Xiao Xuanzi didn't care about anything, so he kept nodding. His master's illness was brought from the womb, also known as fetal poison. He was born with a poor body, and everyone thought that his master wouldn't live long. Even the imperial physicians in the palace couldn't do anything about it. They just said that they would do their best and leave it to fate, and it was impossible to cure it completely. But in fact, it wasn't all like that. His master's health was not hopeless. Xiao Xuanzi had an inexplicable sense of trust in Chu Luchen. He felt that as long as his master was willing, it wouldn't be a problem. Since Chu Luchen had a clear answer, Xiao Xuanzi also felt relieved. After leaving the capital city, he was anxious every day, afraid that his master would give up on himself if he was unhappy. When Qin Wanru came back, she saw Chu Luchen lying on a wide reclining chair, with a light orchid pillow on his head. He closed his eyes and seemed to be asleep. He was covered with a wide black cloak, and there was a cluster of bamboo on the cloak, showing elegance. Even though she had seen him several times, Qin Wanru had to admit that Chu Luchen always gave people a feeling of extreme handsomeness. Every move of his was like a painting, with a sense of nobility and immortality. Even if he was lying silently, he still gave people a feeling of peace and happiness. Seeing her coming back, Xiao Xuanzi didn't seem to be surprised. He reached out and gently waved to her. Qin Wanru collected her thoughts and walked forward slowly. "Second Miss Qin, could you please massage my master's forehead? He coughed badly just now, and he hasn't recovered yet." Xiao Xuanzi lowered his voice for fear of disturbing Chu Luchen. "I'll go into the room to boil medicine for my master." "Is there anyone else?" Qin Wanru looked around. "Yes, but those are guards. If they use too much strength, my master will feel pain." Xiao Xuanzi whispered. "So, your master is a glaze. Can't I use strength?" Qin Wanru was silent for a moment and nodded helplessly. Xiao Xuanzi was overjoyed. He bowed to her respectfully, and then gave up his position. However, he was squatting just now. At this time, he deliberately pulled over the stool where Qin Wanru sat before and invited her to sit down. "Second Miss Qin, please sit down and massage. It's more comfortable. I'll be back soon. My master should be asleep now." "When will he wake up?" Qin Wanru suddenly had a bad feeling. "I'm not sure. He can wake up immediately, or after a while. It depends on whether my master is tired or not," Xiao Xuanzi said implicitly with a bitter face. "So, he still didn't know?" Qin Wanru gritted her teeth gloomily. She thought that Chu Luchen did it on purpose. He knew that she would come back, and he also knew that she would come back. But the problem was that she was asking for help now. Chapter 75. Why did you come back? The youth's lazy voice was filled with a sense of laziness, especially in line with his current situation. "There's someone on the way." Qin Wanru didn't wonder why Chu Luchen knew that the massage therapist had changed. "People from Magistrate Qi's mansion?" Chu Liuchen's lips curved up slightly. He reached out and massaged Qin Wanru's small hand in another place. "I don't want to see Miss Qi." Qin Wanru frowned unconsciously. She really didn't want to see Qi Rongji at this time, especially when Qi Rongji was so arrogant and had brought so many servant girls and old maids with her, as if she was going to intervene forcefully. They blocked her way back to Jingxin Monastery. Qin Yu had sharp eyes and saw such a large group of people from afar, so Qin Wanru hid again. "I heard that Miss Qi and the miss from your mansion are now the two biggest jokes in Jiangzhou. Their reputations are very bad. It's better to stay away from them. Remember to hang out with people with good reputations in the future. Of course, a good reputation may not be good. You can live longer if you have a good reputation." Chu Luchen said casually. His words were very reasonable. Qin Wanru was silent for a while. "Learn from your mistakes. Not all actions need to be so rash to be undone." Chu Luchen seemed to be in a good mood. There was a smile on his handsome face. It was rare that he didn't bully Qin Wanru, nor did he deliberately drive Qin Wanru out. Qin Wanru thought that it would take a lot of effort to get Chu Luchen to take her in for a while. She looked at him with a little surprise. "What? Do you think I'm wrong?" Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows. "Of course not. Whatever Prince says is right." Qin Wanru smiled awkwardly. She didn't want to go out to see Qi Rongji, so she couldn't offend Prince Chen in front of her. Do you really think I'm right? Chu Luchen suddenly opened his eyes and looked up. His ink-colored eyes were as clear as spring water. Harmless to humans and beasts. Of course I really think what Prince says is right. Qin Wanru was still sober. She wouldn't really think that Prince Chen was harmless to humans and beasts. This person was truly ruthless. She was now sitting on the stool, massaging Chu Liuchen's forehead. When he opened his eyes, their eyes were very close to each other. Qin Wanru could almost see his long and curly eyelashes flickering slightly. He was a handsome young man with a gentle smile, which was enough to make every girl fall in love with him. However, Qin Wanru believed that this kind of gentleness and harmlessness was only superficial. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice as she averted her gaze. Does Wang Ye's head still hurt? Her hands felt sore. It still hurts. The gentleness on the handsome young man's face faded away, replaced by a more harmless expression. He looked at her pitifully, and his light-colored lips made people feel more pity for him. Even if Qin Wanru was full of unwillingness, she had to swallow the words that just came out of her mouth at this time. Prince, I still have something to do, so I want to go first. Qin Wanru thought for a while and changed her way of saying. At this time, I have no value to you, so you want to leave? Chu Luchen raised the corner of his mouth again, and the smile diluted the illness on his face. He was another gentle and beautiful young man. If there was no luster of mockery in his black eyes, he would be even more like one. How could Wang Ye think so? I really have something to do. Aunt Shui is not with Grandma now, so I am alone. If Grandma can't find me, she will be worried. Qin Wanru's expression became more and more respectful. She looked at her nose and mouth. Her words were very appropriate, and the meaning was also very obvious. She also looked calm. However, she was anxious in her heart, not knowing whether Prince Chen would let her go or not. Chu Luchen stretched out his hand and massaged his forehead. He turned over and sat up, saying lazily, "Good massage. In the future, when I feel uncomfortable, please help me massage more. If there is a chance, I will definitely help Wang Ye." Qin Wanru didn't understand what he meant, so she responded carefully. Okay, you can go now. I have something to do here, so I won't see you off. Chu Luchen waved his hand and said generously. Qin Wanru felt relieved in her heart, stood up, and bowed to Chu Luchen. Wang Ye, Wanru will leave now. Go go. Chu Luchen waved his hand. Seeing that he let her go, Qin Wanru felt relieved and turned to leave. When she arrived at the intersection of Jingxin Monastery, as expected, Qi Rongji was gone after such a delay, which saved her a lot of trouble. She had nothing to say to Qi Rongji, and she didn't think that Qi Rongji came to see her with good intentions. However, Qin Wanru didn't expect that although she hid from Qi Rongji, she couldn't hide from Qi Tianyu. Unexpectedly, Qi Tianyu was waiting for her outside the yard of the fragrant room where she lived. Seeing her coming, he walked out from behind a tree. Qin Wanru originally wanted to pretend that she didn't see him, but she had to stop when he shouted, "Sister Wanru." Qi Tianyu hurried over. "First young master of the Qi family, what's the matter?" Qin Wanru stopped, bowed, and said politely. Then she took 2 steps back to keep a distance from Qi Tianyu. "Sister Wanru? Why are you so polite?" Seeing Qin Wanru's movement, Qi Tianyu stopped and murmured, looking very embarrassed. "First young master of the Qi family, we used to be on good terms, and you can be regarded as my future brother-in-law, so I didn't avoid you. But now, we are nothing." Qin Wanru raised her head, and there was a bit of coldness in her watery eyes. She looked at Qi Tianyu and said impolitely, "I don't think it's necessary for first young master of the Qi family to see me at this time." After such a series of things, the relationship between the 2 families couldn't go back to the past. "I still have a chance with Yuru in the future," Qi Tianyu murmured. Qin Wanru sneered and interrupted his words. "First young master of the Qi family, are you really not sober or not awake? It's impossible for our 2 families to get married again, and it's impossible for us to be on good terms. What did Big Sister say to make first young master of the Qi family trust her so much and think that you two still have a future? Qin Wanru did not hesitate to remove the thin veil that Qi Tianyu pretended to be peaceful. Qin Wanru, you're so mean. Qi Tianyu's face changed, and he couldn't help getting angry. He looked at Qin Wanru with a bit of hatred and said, "Isn't it all because of you? If you didn't make such a fuss, Yuru would have been my wife by now, right? So, you're blaming this on me? I asked Qin Yuru to climb up the social ladder in the capital city, and the purpose was to rob you? Qi Tianyu, even if no one told you, please look at yourself in the mirror when you go out." Hearing Qi Tianyu's answer, Qin Wanru was not surprised at all. She sneered and looked at Qi Tianyu directly. There was a flash of bloodthirsty hostility in her eyes, and she clenched her hands so hard that her sharp fingers pricked her own palms. It hurt, but not as much as her own heartache. In her previous life, she was pushed into the abyss of blood mercilessly because of this inexplicable anger. Qi Tianyu, you're really nothing. The hatred of 2 lives and 2 lives was only this sentence in the end. After finishing her words, Qin Wanru turned around and walked to the gate of her courtyard. Qi Tianyu was stunned for a moment, and his handsome face froze for a moment. He had always been conceited, but was pulled away by Qin Wanru mercilessly. He was so angry that he reached out his hand and blocked Qin Wanru's way rudely. Seeing this, Qin Yu hurried forward and stood in front of Qin Wanru. "Qin Wanru, I don't care what you said. I only know that I like Yuru, and I will never like a mean and stupid person like you." These words were almost squeezed out of Qi Tianyu's mouth. At this moment, he could no longer maintain the image of an elegant child. His eyes seemed to be stained with poison, and he could no longer maintain his composure. "If it were not for you, such a thing would not have happened. If it were not for you, Yuru would have to marry me. No matter what she thinks in her heart, this is the fact. She can't deny it even if she wants to. Qin Wanru, I will not let you go." Qi Tianyu said word by word. Qin Wanru could easily see the real hatred in his eyes. Looking at Qi Tianyu, who had lost his gentleness and dignity, she smiled slowly. Her bright watery eyes were filled with clear sarcasm. Although she was not tall, she did not show any weakness in height or age when she looked into Qi Tianyu's eyes. The corners of her red lips were slightly raised. There was a trace of childishness like that of a little girl, but there was also a kind of hostility like a sharp sword. His hostility was even more penetrating than Qi Tianyu's hatred. "Qi Tianyu, I will wait for you and Qin Yuru to kill me together. We will not stop until one of us is dead." His words were very light, but his hostility seemed to be accompanied by the bloodthirst from the 9 Serenities' hell. After Qi Tianyu took a few steps back, he found that there was an inexplicable chill in his heart, which made him lose his composure and step back. Qin Wanru, who always made him feel stupid, had never been so fierce. For a moment, his eyes fell on Qin Wanru's straight back, and he seemed to be a little focused and enlightened. Qin Wanru sneered and walked past Qi Tianyu. She slightly raised her head, and a smile condensed on her face, with a malicious look. This was the hatred in her last life, and it was the words she did not say in her last life. Since they could not get along well, there was no need to pretend that everything was peaceful, and then guard against others secretly plotting against them. No matter what Qi Tianyu's purpose was today, she clearly knew that it would not be a friendly one. In her last life, even if Qi Tianyu later knew the truth, he had always been against her, and she had never figured it out. Now she found that no matter what the truth was, Qi Tianyu stubbornly pushed all the blame to her. He thought that she was the source of evil, and he wholeheartedly wanted to trample her into the mud. In this case, there was nothing to say. Chapter 76. Shocked by Qin Wanru's imposing manner, Qi Tianyu just watched Qin Wanru walk into the yard and close the door. "Child, what should we do?" Qi Hai mumbled when he saw Qin Wanru enter the yard. "Let's go back." Qi Tianyu pulled himself together and clenched his teeth to suppress the fear in his heart. She was just a little girl and it was useless for her to vent her anger. He secretly cursed himself for panicking just now. His back was actually drenched in cold sweat. "But about young Lady Qin?" Qi Hai said cautiously. Their purpose of coming here today was to ask Qin Wanru to put in a good word for Qin Yuru. Qi Tianyu even thought of pleasing Qin Wanru in order to get Qin Wanru to help Qin Yuru. He thought it was not a difficult thing. In the past, as long as he asked, Qin Wanru would do it. But Qi Tianyu did not expect Qin Wanru to be so fierce and fall out with him. Even before he could say anything to coax her, they had developed to the point of fighting to the death. Qi Tianyu did not know why things had gone beyond his imagination. Shouldn't Qin Wanru give in if he coaxed her a little? Let Yuru solve her own problem. She deserves it, Qi Tianyu said coldly as he turned around and walked out of Jingxin Monastery. He did not understand why Qin Wanru treated him like this. Could it be that there was some kind of trick in this? Like what Yuru said, Qin Wanru was playing hard to get. How could a little girl know so much? Young Lady Qin is going to the capital city. If you don't help her, it will be difficult for her and you. Qi Hai reminded him. In fact, Qi Tianyu knew it even without his reminder. Moreover, Qin Wanru had just ripped off the veil that covered his ugliness. Tell her that I can't help her. Let her take care of herself. Qi Tianyu was annoyed and even found Qin Yuru's words annoying. But Miss Qin, she will blame young master. Qi Hai hurried to catch up with Qi Tianyu and walked out of the gate of Jingxin Monastery. She can blame me if she wants. From now on, just let her be. Qi Tianyu was getting more and more annoyed, but he couldn't understand why Qin Wanru dared to talk to him like this. She used to call him Brother Tianyu. Was that delicate and innocent look of the past and that ruthless look just now really the same person? But first Miss Qin. Qi Hai still wanted to speak for Qin Yuru, but was interrupted by Qi Tianyu impatiently. Are you my servant or Qin Yuru's servant? Why do you always speak for her? I am naturally young master's manservant. Qi Hai was stunned for a moment and hurriedly expressed his loyalty. Since you're one of my people, then shut up, Qi Tianyu said with a gloomy face. He strode outside. Qi Hai didn't dare to speak anymore and trotted behind him. Coming out of Jingxin Monastery, there was a large piece of flat land on the right. Some pilgrims' carriages and horses were parked there, and Qi Tianyu's horse was also tied to a tree on the side. Qi Tianyu walked over angrily. When he was about to untie the horse, he suddenly blacked out. Then he was hit hard on the head and he fell down instantly. The manservant walked behind him and fell down faster than him. Two people who looked like guards, one on each side, pulled them into the woods at the side. They kicked the two people who were half covered in the bags hard a few times until they hit the trees behind them. Only then did they leave. When Qi Tianyu woke up, it was already evening. It was still dark in front of him. He stretched out his hand and forcefully pulled off the sack on his head. Seeing that the sky had already darkened, he felt dizzy. He reached out his hand and touched his forehead, which had already swollen. Qi Hai also woke up at this time. After pulling off the sack, he saw Qi Tianyu's bruised face and shouted in shock. He hurriedly climbed over and cried, "Young master, what's wrong with you? Young master? Shut up." Qi Tianyu snapped and sat up with his hand pressed on his forehead. He felt pain all over his body as if he had been stepped on. "Eldest young master, did someone plot against us? Why would someone plot against us?" Qi Hai also crawled up, one hand on his waist as he cried. They were inexplicably beaten, and the most important thing was that they didn't even know who did it. "Let's go back." Qi Tianyu knew that even if he wanted to find them, he might not be able to find them. Otherwise, they wouldn't put a sack on him and beat him. He struggled to stand up with the help of a tree on the side. When one of his feet stepped on the ground, he hurriedly shrank back because of the pain. He didn't know how his leg bone was. "Young master, are you okay? Your servant will help you." Qi Hai wiped his tears and also stood up, supporting Qi Tianyu. However, he was also not well. He didn't know where his foot had hit, and he was slightly limping. Qi Tianyu gritted his teeth and walked out with the help of the manservant. He was going to the capital city early tomorrow morning. "Your servant will go back and ask the magistrate to investigate." The manservant angrily wiped his tears and said, "No need. It must be Ning Yuan army general." A trace of coldness flashed in Qi Tianyu's eyes. In Jiangzhou Prefecture, If there was anyone who dared to beat the magistrate, there was no one except Qin Huayong. It must be Qin Huayong who sent someone to follow Qin Wanru, and then found out that he was chasing after Qin Wanru. Speaking of this, Qi Tianyu also felt guilty, so he didn't dare to make more trouble. This time he went up the mountain secretly, and he didn't want his father to know, so he had to suffer the loss. However, Qi Tianyu didn't expect that this was not the last time he was beaten by Qin Wanru. Watching the master and servant leave, the figures of two guards appeared behind the tree. They looked at each other and silently left to report to their master. Qin Wanru didn't know that after Qi Tianyu left here, he was put in a sack and severely beaten. However, when the news of Qi Tianyu's departure came to her the next day, she was very happy. The reason why she got the news of Qi Tianyu by accident was that someone in the mansion said that Qin Yuru had gone to the capital city last night. Calculating the time, it was the time when Qi Tianyu was looking for trouble, so she asked the old maid in the mansion about Qi Tianyu's news. One went to the capital city to find a relative, and the other went to the capital city to go to the bedroom. They staggered when they walked, as if they didn't have any contact. However, Qin Wanru believed that they would still have contact in the future. However, she wasn't afraid. In this life, she wouldn't be the Qin Wanru who was framed by them and inexplicably thought that they were wrong. The medical book was sent to the meditation room of the master of Jingshin Monastery the next morning. Just like last time, the meditation room of the master of Jingshin Monastery was very quiet. She was the only one reciting scriptures on the rush cushion. After Qin Wanru was brought in, she chose another rush cushion and sat down. She picked up the medical book and read it carefully. The master of Jingshin Monastery recited scriptures for a long time, but Qin Wanru didn't feel annoyed at all. She had been quietly reading the medical book and didn't seem to be affected. In fact, when a nun came in and asked if she wanted to have lunch, she just shook her head. It was so peaceful in the room that people seemed to forget about lunch. The master of Jingshin Monastery didn't stop, and Qin Wanru didn't leave either. When the master of Jingshin Monastery stopped reciting scriptures, she opened her eyes and looked at Qin Wanru calmly. Qin Wanru put down the medical book in her hand and bowed to the master of Jingshin Monastery respectfully. Then she presented the medical book beside her hand. "Do you really want to learn medicine?" The master of Jingshin Monastery looked at the medical book and asked. "I really want to learn." Qin Wanru raised her head and looked at the master of Jingshin Monastery with clear eyes. She was determined. Learning medicine is actually very hard. The master of Jingshin Monastery sighed and said, "My junior sister thought that you are suitable for it, but actually I don't think so. Thanks to Mingqiu Nun's love, I will try my best." Qin Wanru's eyes were burning with eagerness. "This matter, you should ask her for her own opinion." The master of Jingshin Monastery shook her head helplessly and pointed outside with a subtle smile. "Do you need me to ask someone to bring you there?" "No, thank you." Qin Wanru smiled and bowed respectfully again. Then she stood up. "Do you mind bringing me lunch?" The master of Jingshin Monastery smiled. Such a smart and patient child was the best for her to learn medicine. Moreover, her junior sister had found that this child was very talented. She just didn't know what her junior sister thought now. Her junior sister also had a childish temper. Previously, she wanted to take Qin Wanru as her disciple, but now she was reluctant. "I don't mind." Qin Wanru nodded. The lunch was in the food basket outside the door. Qin Yu came to carry it. Qin Wanru didn't ask who Jingshin Monastery wanted to give it to, and only let Qin Yu follow her to carry the food basket. This was considered as passing the test of Jingshin Monastery master, but the next test was the most important. After all, she wanted to be apprenticed to Mingqiu Nun and learn medicine. It all depended on Mingqiu Nun's opinion now. The door of the hut was still locked. From the outside, it seemed that there was still no one. Qin Yu put down the lunch in her hand and looked around in astonishment. There was no one around. "Miss, is this the place where Mingqiu Nun lives?" "It should be." Qin Wanru nodded. She had seen Mingqiu Nun in Jingshin Monastery before. If it wasn't by chance, she wouldn't know that Mingqiu Nun actually lived here instead of Jingshin Monastery. "But there is no one here. What should I do? Where should I send the lunch?" Qin Yu said blankly. Her eyes fell on the iron lock in front of the door. The iron lock was hanging high. How could there be anyone here? Qin Wanru lifted the food basket from the ground and carefully brought it to the door of the hut. Her watery eyes fell on the tightly locked iron lock, and she carefully looked at it. A locked house was indeed unlikely to be inhabited, but what if it was not locked? As she thought so, she looked at the iron lock more and more carefully. When she saw it clearly, she couldn't help showing a knowing smile on her face. Her red lips were slightly raised. She had neglected it last time. Chapter 77. The lock fell off. Qin Yu's eyes almost popped out. She couldn't believe that the chain was still locked but fell on the ground. She murmured to herself, "It's not locked. It's just hanging on the door." Who would have thought that the lock was actually just hanging on the buckle on the door? The door was not locked. "Not bad, you've observed it carefully." Laughter came from the door. "Mingqiu nun." Qin Wanru took a step back and said respectfully. The door was opened in Qin Yu's astonished eyes. A nun appeared in front of them. She was about 30 years old and looked much younger than the master of Jingxin Monastery. Even if she wore plain clothes, she still looked beautiful and gentle. She looked at Qin Wanru with her curved eyes and looked kind and amiable. "Do you really want to learn medicine?" Mingqiu nun looked at Qin Wanru with a smile and a gentle attitude. "I really want to learn medicine." Qin Wanru nodded and knelt down. "Nun, please accept me as your disciple." Mingqiu nun didn't answer immediately. Her eyes fell on Qin Wanru's face. She looked at her carefully and the smile on her face became more obvious. She originally thought highly of Qin Wanru, but she was rejected by old Madame Qin and Qin Wanru. Later, she gave up the idea. This time, she heard that Qin Wanru wanted to learn medicine again. She was afraid that Qin Wanru just did it on a whim, so she deliberately set up several tests. Tests of scheming, eyesight, and patience. And Qin Wanru passed all of them. She was more and more satisfied with Qin Wanru. "In this case, you can learn medicine from me." Hearing that Mingqiu nun agreed, Qin Wanru was overjoyed and respectfully bowed to Mingqiu nun several times. Mingqiu nun smiled and helped her up. She turned around and walked inside with her. When they entered the room, Qin Wanru respectfully bowed to Mingqiu nun again and served the tea passed by Qin Yu. Then she accepted the order and stood up. "Have you read the medical book that I gave you before?" Mingqiu nun took the tea, took a sip, put it aside and asked. "Yes, I have." Qin Wanru answered. "In this case, I'll test you." "Master, please set the question." "You don't have to call me master. You are not a monk, and you are the daughter of an aristocratic family. My disciple is naturally a monk. You can still call me a nun." Mingqiu nun said with a smile. Qin Wanru nodded. Then Mingqiu nun asked questions about some contents and practical operations in the medical book. With the medical skills she learned in the last life, and after waking up in this life, she carefully studied the medical book. No matter what Mingqiu nun asked, Qin Wanru answered fluently without any pause. This made Mingqiu nun more satisfied. She went into the inner room, took out a small iron box and pushed it to Qin Wanru. "You go to my senior sister's place and take her medical book. That book is the second one in your hand. It focuses more on practical movements and specific treatment of symptoms than the previous one. There is also a set of golden needles used for acupuncture. Now you are in Jingxin Monastery. Come here every morning to learn. If you go back to the mansion, come here at the beginning or the middle of the month to learn practical skills." "Thank you, nun." Qin Wanru was overjoyed and took it with both hands respectfully. After coming back from Mingqiu nun's place, Qin Wanru went to the meditation room of the master of Jingxin Monastery. She took the second half of the medical book and went back to see Madame Dowager. Madame Dowager's body was stable and she seemed to be in a good mood. She was just worried that Shui Ruolin was not fully prepared, so she asked Qin Wanru to go and see what else needed. No matter what was needed, there was no need to care about money. Madame Dowager took 5 silver notes to Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru knew that Madame Dowager was afraid that Madame D would make trouble again. She nodded immediately. She was also worried about Madame D. With her temperament, She would not be willing to be arrested without putting up a fight. Even if Madame Dowager did not mention it, she also wanted to see Shui Rulin. The manor at the foot of Jingxin Monastery was not big, but it had been decorated with a lot of noise. The big red happiness character was hung on the door. It was obvious that there was going to be a wedding soon. The surrounding families were also very interested in this sudden happy event. They walked around the manor in groups of 3 to 5 to watch the bustling scene and asked about some gossip. When Qin Wanru came here in a carriage, she saw some people around the door, pointing at them and watching them. Seeing the carriage coming, some bolder people deliberately turned to the front of the carriage and wanted to see who was in the carriage. The carriage stopped at the door. Qin Wanru held Qin Yu's hand and got off the carriage. People who saw it were all amazed. "Who's Mrs. Shi? She is so beautiful, like a little fairy." Someone whispered to the people beside him. "Is she second Miss Qin?" Someone seemed to have seen her before. He was surprised and his voice was a little loud. Qin Wanru tilted her head slightly and saw a man in his 30s. He was dressed like an ordinary villager. He was thin and small and looked a little wretched. When he saw Qin Wanru turned her head, he avoided looking at her. Qin Wanru turned back and held Qin Yu to walk inside. "Second Miss Qin? Which family's second miss is she from?" Someone asked in a low voice. He had not guessed Qin Wanru's identity at the moment. Qin was not a small surname. There were many families with the surname Qin in Jiangzhou. Whether it was the Qin's mansion of Ningyuan army general or the Qin's mansion of other big families, they were all wealthy families in the eyes of the villagers. The misses in their mansions were all worthy of the title of Mississippi. She is the second miss of Ningyuan army general's mansion. It was still the man's voice. Qin Wanru's lips curled up into a cold smile. Although she used to walk on the street, she was not as favored as Qin Yuru. Of course, she could not be as casual as Qin Yuru, so she did not walk on the street often. A villager could recognize her at a glance, and he was so sure. His behavior was a little sneaky. It was not normal no matter how she looked at it. She is the one who smashed the bridal sedan chair. When the man said this, many people immediately understood and made a sound of realization. Qin Wanru entered the courtyard and waved her hand to let the servants close the door. But she did not leave and stood still. "She is the second Miss Qin. I don't know what she is going to do. Could it be that she wants to arrange another marriage with the eldest young master of Magistrate Qi?" The man's somewhat instigating voice came from outside the door. It was not very low, so Qin Wanru could hear it clearly inside the door. Her pink cherry lips curled up and her smile was cold. "No way. It is impossible. Didn't they say that the marriage has been dissolved?" A few people asked. This matter was known by the whole Jiangzhou people. Even if the villager was not there at that time, he had heard about it. "You wait and see. It is going to be lively again. Just wait and see when the bridal sedan chair is smashed," the man said proudly. Then there were some deliberately biased words, which made Qin Yu's face turn blue. "Miss, I will go to teach him a lesson in case he talks nonsense there." "Okay, take the 2 old maids at the door with you." Qin Wanru did not stop them. She turned back with a slight smile, and a trace of coldness flashed in her eyes. "Yes, miss." Qin Yu didn't expect that Qin Wanru would agree so readily. She was immediately overjoyed and opened the door with the 2 old maids who had just closed the door. The 2 old maids held 2 sticks as thick as the mouth of a bowl in their hands. The door of the courtyard was suddenly opened, and Qin Yu walked out. She turned around and walked in the direction of the man. 2 old maids followed behind her with sticks in their hands. At the sight of this posture, the people outside the door were all stunned and looked at the 3 of them in astonishment. Qin Wanru also turned back and stood in front of the door, looking at the scene in front of her coldly. The man shrank back and wanted to hide behind others. However, Qin Yu was coming for him, so he could not avoid her. She walked in front of him and gave him a hard slap. "Smashing the bridal sedan chair? Do you want to see it again? Or do you want to deliberately make trouble again?" "Hey, why did you hit me?" The man was stunned by the slap. He touched his burning face and responded immediately. He immediately reached out and wanted to slap Qin Yu back. After Qin Yu slapped him, She stepped back. The two old maids came forward and raised the sticks in their hands high. The man who wanted to rush over was so scared that he did not dare to be rude. Who are you? Why do you talk nonsense here? Do you want to deliberately make trouble? Qin Yu raised her head and said coldly. She also learned a little from Qin Wanru's behavior these days. Now she took it out and it was quite good. You little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? The man said angrily. Everyone is gossiping. Why did you hit us? Don't tell me that General's mansion doesn't allow us to speak. Sure enough, he was a troublemaker. He actually made his own problem into everyone's problem and put General's mansion on the opposite side of everyone. This was not something an ordinary villager could do. Qin Wanru smiled coldly and waited for him to continue. No matter what was going on, at least it would not be a good time for it to happen. She revealed the matter now and caught others unprepared. Other people are just watching the fun, but you are slandering our general's mansion. I don't know who sent you as a spy. How dare you slander our general's mansion and ruin our marriage? Qin Yu sneered and took 2 steps forward. Who gave you such courage to do such a thing? Her words were aggressive. The matter suddenly escalated to the level of going against General's mansion, which made the others present unable to stand it. They looked around and all retreated to the sides, leaving only the man. You, what nonsense are you talking about? I'm just watching the fun. There are so many things that I have to say. Seeing that the people who could hide themselves retreated to the sides, the man panicked and argued loudly. You're just watching the fun, but you still want to deliberately stir up trouble. You really have a bad intention. Don't let General's mansion find out that you have done something wrong, otherwise, you will be punished for both crimes. Qin Yu sneered and warned him. She turned back and walked to Qin Wanru, with 2 old maids still following behind. Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the man. She saw his face changed slightly and looked panicky. He was even more panicky than when he was slapped by Qin Yu. He already had a plan in his mind. Qin Wanru took Qin Yu back to the yard. Shui Ruolin had already received the message and asked someone to invite her over. In the main room, the red silk was hung down, and the red characters of happiness were pasted everywhere. Although Shui Ruolin's clothes were not red, they were not white as usual either. It was a set of aqua blue clothes embroidered with red patterns, which made her look younger than usual. Wanru, what happened? When he saw Qin Wanru, he pulled her over and carefully looked at her face. When he found that there was no accident, he was relieved. Chapter 78. I'm fine. Qin Wanru shook her head with a smile and comforted her. Grandma asked me to come here to see how the decoration is going. Is there anything else you need? If not, we can buy more. Grandma said that she hopes you can marry into the general's mansion with honor. She doesn't want you to feel wronged. As Qin Wanru said, she took out several banknotes given by old grandma and put them all in Shui Ruolin's hand. Aunt Shui, Grandma is afraid that you don't have enough money, so she asked me to give you some more. Looking at the banknotes in her hand, Shui Ruolin knew that it was old grandma's private money again. She felt sad. Old grandma really treated her as her daughter. She had been so devoted to her for so many years. Aunt Shui, if there is anything wrong, you should ask Nanny Duan to come back and tell us immediately. This is not the mansion. Qin Wanru blinked her bright eyes and reminded Shui Ruolin. Shui Ruolin's face calmed down, but her eyes also flashed a trace of sharpness. She was not stupid. How could she not understand Qin Wanru's meaning? She immediately nodded and said, Wanru, don't worry. If there is anything wrong, I won't force myself. Hearing her words, Qin Wanru was relieved. She was afraid that Shui Ruolin would miscalculate and make a mistake first. At that time, it would be too late to regret. Since the matter had been settled, after chatting with Shui Ruolin for a while, Qin Wanru winked at Nanny Duan and left. Nanny Duan followed her and walked out together. Nanny Duan, help me find out who was slapped by Qin Yu at the door just now. Send someone else to keep an eye on him. Standing in the corridor, Qin Wanru ordered in a low voice. This wretched man was extremely suspicious. If she didn't care about him just now, he would have escaped. Nanny Duan knew the seriousness of the matter. She immediately nodded and asked someone to go out to inquire about this man. Soon they heard about this man. He is a local ruffian in this place. He usually doesn't do proper work. He has an old mother at home and married a wife. Later, she found that he didn't do proper work, so she ran away with someone else. His friends are all riffraff. He is not a good person. Nanny Duan reported the news to Qin Wanru. Where does this ruffian hang out in the past? Standing on the path, Qin Wanru casually picked up a falling red maple leaf from the ground and asked faintly while looking at a broken leaf hole in the maple leaf. I heard that he's just hanging around in these few villages. He's doing quite well in these villages. Everyone in the surrounding villages knows about him. He even has some reputation in the village. Nanny Duan was a careful person. She had been prepared for Qin Wanru's questions when she asked someone to inquire about Qin Wanru. Not in Jiangzhou City? Asked Qin Wanru. He's not in Jiangzhou City. There are many local ruffians in Jiangzhou City. As a ruffian who can't even make a name for himself, it's better for him to stay in his own place. Originally, he just didn't starve to death. But these days, he suddenly became rich. Nanny Duan frowned. As she said that, she also felt that something was wrong. When did this happen? Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows and showed a faint smile on her pink and tender face. She knew in her heart that it should be him. Last night, he not only brought a lot of food for his old mother, but also called several brothers who used to hang out with him and had a feast. Nanny Duan had experienced a lot of things. Although it was Qin Wanru who asked, when she answered, she still sensed a lot of meanings. Second miss, is there any problem with this ruffian? Why did he bring a lot of money back when Miss Shui is about to get married here? What does he want to do by inviting some people who don't do proper work to have a feast? The more she thought about it, the more suspicious she felt. I originally just wanted to see what kind of person he was who dared to pick others from the crowd and pour dirty water on the general's mansion. Nanny Duan, do you think we should tell Grandma? Qin Wanru bit her small cherry lips and looked very embarrassed. Her childish little face was tangled, which made her look very pitiful. She shook the maple leaf in her hand and narrowed her eyes. It's better not to tell old Grandma about this. I will ask someone to keep an eye on him and make sure he won't make any trouble on that day. Nanny Duan thought for a while and said. Before the truth was clear, Nanny Duan thought it was better not to disturb Madame Dowager. If it was just a false alarm or there was no evidence to prove it, Madame Dowager would just be more worried and it wouldn't play any substantial role. Then I'll have to trouble you, Nanny. If you find anything else, you must remember to tell Grandma or Father. Qin Wanru looked up at Nanny Duan and urged. Nanny Duan was a steady person, but it was a matter of great importance and there was no room for any mistake. Second miss, don't worry, I understand. Nanny Duan's face became serious. Obviously, because of Qin Wanru's repeated reminders, she really took this matter to heart. Qin Wanru picked up the leaf in her hand and got close to the broken leaf hole. She looked up at the sky and saw a sky with holes in it. The sky was actually very big, but because of the hole in the leaf, she could only see such a small part of the sky. Maybe this was the meaning of a leaf obstructing the eyes. She slightly raised the corner of her mouth and showed a trace of a cold arc. In this place, how could she be obstructed? After talking with Nanny Duan, Qin Wanru did not stay long and went into the room to say goodbye to Shui Ruolin. Then she returned to Jingxin Monastery with Qin Yu and was ready to wait for the news from Nanny Duan. She and Nanny Duan did not mention Madame D, but both of them knew that if there was any change, it must be Madame D's doing. In the next few days, Qin Wanru was very peaceful. In the morning, she first went to Jing Qiunun's place to learn medical skills, and in the afternoon, she went to chat with old Grandma and let old Grandma relax. With the foundation of her previous life, she could learn anything with half the effort. Jing Qiunun saw that it was not difficult to teach other skills, so she skipped some basic skills and directly taught her acupuncture skills. In a few days, Qin Wanru's hands had been densely pricked with many small acupuncture wounds, especially the part between the thumb and index finger, which was the simplest and convenient place to be pricked. However, she was unfamiliar with it at the beginning, so her white and tender little hands were red and swollen. Old Grandma was so distressed that she almost forced Qin Wanru to stop learning. However, Qin Wanru had made up her mind. She endured the pain even though her hands were swollen like steamed buns. Every time, she smiled like a flower and did not complain at all. Old Grandma had no choice but to say nothing. Fortunately, except for the first few inaccurate positions of the needles, Qin Wanru's following needles were basically very smooth. The swelling on her hand also gradually reduced from the initial high-steamed bun shape. Coupled with the medicine that Jing Qiunun prepared for her, the swelling was very effective. A few days passed in a flash. In the afternoon, after chatting with Old Grandma for a while, Qin Wanru walked out of Old Grandma's place and saw Nanny Duan rushing to her, so she stopped. "Second miss." Nanny Duan walked very hurriedly and was sweating. Seeing Qin Wanru's small body blocking the door of the courtyard, she hurriedly stopped and said while wiping her sweat. Inexplicably, she had regarded Qin Wanru as the backbone. "Nanny, did something happen?" Seeing the sweat stains on Nanny Duan's face, Qin Wanru waved to her, then turned to walk aside and whispered to Nanny Duan who followed her. "Second miss, something really happened. It's what you told me to pay attention to before." Nanny Duan followed her with a pale face and a gloomy look. Before she could stand still, she immediately lowered her voice and said to Qin Wanru, "What did you find out?" Qin Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Tomorrow should be the wedding day of Aunt Shui and father. Is it tomorrow? Tomorrow's wedding was a big event and there was no room for mistakes. For tomorrow's wedding, Old Grandma and Qin Wanru had to go down the mountain later. I found out that those ruffians were secretly talking about smashing the bridal sedan chair, just like what Second Miss did at the gate of the mansion that day. Nanny Duan wiped the sweat on her forehead. If it weren't for the fact that this matter was so serious that she couldn't make a decision at the moment, she wouldn't want to make trouble in front of Old Grandma. "How dare they?" Qin Yu said angrily, "Aren't they afraid of the general's punishment?" They said that they were inspired by the fact that Second Miss smashed the bridal sedan chair, so they also smashed it. They said that the family that Miss Shui married before didn't allow Miss Shui to remarry. Since Nanny Duan got the news, she had been pacing around in the room. If this matter started from the general's side, there wouldn't be any problem. But if it started from Miss Shui's side, there would really be a problem. Miss Shui was now a widow. If her husband's family really didn't allow them to marry, they would make a scene. Even if the general finally married Miss Shui, the reputation of Miss Shui and the general would be tarnished. Moreover, the general couldn't punish Miss Shui's original husband's family. Otherwise, it would be bad for everyone. They also want to copy me to smash the bridal sedan chair? Qin Wanru smiled. "Nanny Duan, is this news reliable?" "Very reliable. After Second Miss left that day, I paid special attention and asked 2 people to keep an eye on these ruffians. Both of them came to the same conclusion. Second Miss, this should be Madam's idea, right?" Nanny Duan hesitated for a moment and still said bluntly. Although Second Miss didn't seem to grow up and was a little smaller than her, Nanny Duan felt that Second Miss was sensible and intelligent. It was okay to tell Second Miss this in advance. "Don't ask for Grandma, ask for Father. You go down the mountain to find Father immediately and tell him that these ruffians want to make trouble. Ask Father to send people to imprison these ruffians first." Qin Wanru's voice was very gentle, but her words were swift and decisive without any hesitation. "We must catch this group of people tonight, in case they make trouble tomorrow. Just tell the general to arrest them without any evidence? After all, there is no real evidence." Although Nanny Duan was knowledgeable, it was the means of the backyard after all. She felt that without evidence, there was no way to convince people. "Nanny, if this matter is made known, will it affect Father and Aunt Shui?" Qin Wanru's little face tightened and she asked seriously. "Yes, it will be very serious. In the future, I am afraid that Miss Shui will not be able to raise her head in front of others. The reputation of the general will also be affected." Nanny Duan thought for a moment and said, "More than that, if Aunt Shui's family really make trouble and smash the bridal sedan chair, Aunt Shui will lose her face. She will not even have the face to go out in the future." And father, if someone accuses him of this, it will even hinder his official career. Qin Wanru sneered and fluttered her long eyelashes. With these 2 points, it doesn't matter whether there is evidence or not. You just need to tell father about this matter. I believe father will immediately make a decision. For this kind of matter, there was no need for any evidence. As long as there was suspicion, it would be erased immediately. Qin Wanru believed that Qin Huaiyong still had this courage. Seeing that Qin Wanru said it seriously but looked calm, Nanny Duan also calmed down and nodded. Second miss, I will not go to see old grandma, but go to see the general directly? Yes, you go and come back quickly. Just stay with Aunt Shui. I will go down the mountain with grandmother later. But I am afraid it will not be that easy for me and grandmother to go down the mountain. Qin Wanru nodded and a trace of coldness flashed in her watery eyes. Since Madame D had done something to Shui Ruolin's marriage, she was afraid that Madame D would not let go of her grandmother. Madame D would not let Shui Ruolin marry into the general's mansion. On the one hand, she would start from Shui Ruolin, and on the other hand, she would start from her grandmother. Yes, second miss, then I will go. Nanny Duan also knew that this matter should not be delayed, so she turned around and left in a hurry. Originally, she had no idea and wanted to ask old grandma for advice. Now, after hearing Qin Wanru's words, she immediately knew that it was useless to ask old grandma for this matter. She immediately left Jingxin Monastery, got on the small carriage that she had come here before, and hurried down the mountain. Qin Wanru came to the yard where the carriages of each family were repaired and parked. The carriage of Ningyuan Army General's mansion was already waiting there. Seeing Qin Wanru coming, a coachman hurriedly came forward and saluted. Second miss, when can old grandma go down the mountain? I have prepared everything here. Everything is ready? Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows and asked. Chapter 79. A carriage that was parked beside the general's mansion's carriage tilted in front of everyone's eyes, and then heavily hit the general's mansion's carriage. That carriage was used by old Grandma Chung. Being pressed by the carriage beside it, it couldn't bear the force and tilted to the other carriage. One after another, carriages were knocked to the ground. A series of accidents happened. When everyone finally pulled the carriages apart one by one, they found that the general's mansion's carriage was badly damaged. Especially old grandma's wide carriage, because it was facing the first carriage that was hit, the roof of the carriage was tilted, and the wheels were crushed, so it couldn't sit people at all. As for the other carriages, they were also hit to the side. How could they go down the mountain like this? Qin Yu was dumbfounded. Second miss, it's because one of the wheels of that carriage fell off, and it couldn't stand still, so it hit the carriage of our mansion. The coachman who came to report to Qin Wanru before ran over with sweat all over his head. They were about to go down the mountain, but such an accident happened. Qin Wanru frowned, and her willowy eyebrows unconsciously became a little cold. What should we do now? After a long while, Qin Wanru stretched her willowy eyebrows and asked calmly. Her eyes fell on the carriages that obviously couldn't sit, but she didn't panic at all, as if she didn't know that if the carriages couldn't be used, old grandma couldn't go down the mountain. Second miss, do you want to borrow a few carriages from others? The coachman asked with sweat all over his head. Where can I borrow them? Qin Wanru said. In fact, there were many carriages parked here, but most of them were very simple oil wall carriages, narrow and small, and not stable. Not to mention that old grandma's identity didn't deserve it. Even if it did, old grandma was still sick now, and Qin Wanru didn't dare to let her sit in such a narrow carriage to go down the mountain. If something really happened, no one could bear the responsibility. I don't know. The coachman who suggested was also very embarrassed. His eyes followed Qin Wanru's gaze, and there was indeed no suitable carriage here. Find a way to pull these broken carriages down the mountain to repair them. Qin Wanru ordered. Your servant will get the carriage off in a moment. But old madam, what should we do? The coachman was both embarrassed and flustered. He didn't know what to do. You can ask my grandma about it. You can go down the mountain first. Qin Wanru frowned and turned away unhappily, ignoring what happened in the parking lot. Seeing her leaving, Qin Yu hurried to catch up with her. but Qin Wanru stopped when she just turned a corner. "Miss, what do we do now? Old madam should have woken up by now, right?" Qin Yu saw that she stopped and asked anxiously. Just now, young Miss came out from old madam's place to see if the carriage was ready. But looking at the current situation, the carriage could not be used at all. Since the carriage could not be used, old grandma could not go down the mountain. If old grandma did not show up to preside over the marriage of the general tomorrow, others might spread the rumor. Even Shui Ruolin's marriage would not be recognized. Qin Wanru's eyes darkened. Needless to say, this was Madame D's conspiracy. How could the wheels of such a big carriage fall off easily? Thinking of the evasive eyes of the other two coachmen, she knew that this must have something to do with them. In order to make Shui Ruolin's marriage unreasonable, Madame D really did a lot of tricks. Grandma's body could not be used by ordinary carriages. But if there was someone else's carriage, they could definitely borrow it. Qin Wanru believed that the carriage would be even more comfortable for Grandma than the one in her mansion. The master of Jingxin Monastery had a carriage, a very stable one. In the past, there were wives of big families who came to see the master of Jingxin Monastery. If it was inconvenient for them to go back, they could borrow the master of Jingxin Monastery's carriage. "Go to the master of Jingxin Monastery and tell her that I want to borrow her carriage," Qin Wanru said while thinking. There is a carriage in the monastery? It was the first time that Qin Yu knew about it. She opened her eyes wide in surprise. "Yes, you can borrow it," Qin Wanru said with a smile. In fact, few people used this carriage. The master of Jingxin Monastery just used it as a spare. After all, big families all had large and stable carriages. Therefore, basically no one knew about it, even Madame Dowager. If Qin Wanru hadn't followed Mingqiu Nun to learn medicine these days and Mingqiu Nun specifically mentioned this spare carriage, she wouldn't have known about it. After sending Qin Yu to borrow the carriage from the master of Jingxin Monastery, Qin Wanru hurried back to old grandma. Old grandma had already stood up and sat there waiting for Qin Wanru to come back. Qin Wanru did not hide it from old grandma and told her about the accident of her carriage in front of her. After she finished her words, old grandma had already understood everything. She coughed in a low voice and looked at Qin Wanru approvingly. While thinking that Madame D was playing tricks again, she also approved of Qin Wanru. This granddaughter had really grown up and was no longer the little girl who had not grown up. The carriage was borrowed soon. This carriage was very big. Because it might be used by patients, the body was also very wide and stable. There were only some simple and practical things, very thick and very soft. When Qin Wanru helped old grandma into the carriage, she found that the carriage was indeed very good. There was a big couch in it. Old grandma lay on it and leaned against it. There was a big window beside the couch, so she would not feel stuffy lying on it. Qin Wanru opened the window and let down the gauze curtain inside. Not only the air was fresh, but also it did not block the view. The carriage was also very stable, even more comfortable than the carriage old grandma used before. "Grandma, take a rest first. I will call you when we arrive." Qin Wanru covered old grandma with the quilt and said softly. Old grandma knew that she was not in good health, so she was not too stubborn at this time. She nodded and closed her eyes. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain, she would look for Madame D. At this time, she still needed to conserve her energy. The shabby carriages of General's mansion went down the mountain first. Although the carriages were slanted, they could still move as long as they were careful and slow. The carriages drove all the way to the backyard of General's mansion. After the carriage drivers got off the carriage, the coachman who talked to Qin Wanru before went to report to Madame D. Hearing that the coachman came back, but old grandma and Qin Wanru did not go down the mountain, a proud smile appeared on Madame D's tense face. "Did second miss say anything?" Madame D asked worriedly. She always felt that this girl was not so easy to worry about. Second miss said there was nothing she could do. "She just asked us to pull the carriage down and repair it," the coachman reported proudly. "She didn't ask you to pull it back immediately?" Madame D asked. "This carriage is already like this, how can we pull it back immediately? Even if second miss said it, we know how to answer." The coachman became more and more proud. His words made Madame D happy. She picked up the tea beside her and took a sip. She waved her hand and asked the coachman to leave. Nanny Zhou was a smart person. When she left with the coachman, she purposely gave him a hush money. The coachman thanked her and said a lot of words of gratitude before he left. After the coachman left, Nanny Zhou went back into the room. Let's see how this girl can solve it this time. Madame D could not hold back the smile on her face. Madam, you've used two methods at the same time. Even a cunning adult can't do anything, not to mention second miss is still an ignorant girl. Nanny Zhou smiled and flattered Madame D. What she said was actually what she was thinking. This time, no matter what second miss tried, she could not solve the trap set by Madame D. Shui Rulin wants to marry the general openly. She doesn't know if she has the life to do so. She is just a widow. She really thinks she is so great. I want her to become the scandal of the whole Jiangzhou. So what if the general agrees to marry her? Qin Wanru is not the only one who can smash the bridal sedan chair. I can do it too. Madame D said complacently. A trace of viciousness flashed in her eyes. Qin Wanru smashed Qi Tianyu's bridal sedan chair gave her a lot of inspiration. Since Qin Wanru smashed it, it was not a big deal for her to let others smash it. Moreover, it was Shui Rulin's in-laws who smashed the bridal sedan chair. Even if Qin Huaiyong was extremely powerful in Jiangzhou, he could not stop people from talking. At that time, he would be anxious to explain this matter and would not care whether it was really Shui Rulin's in-laws. At this time, if old grandma did not show up, it was expected that she would suppress this marriage on the grounds that old grandma was not here and the marriage did not count. Old grandma did not admit it and she did not agree. Even if Shui Rulin married into the mansion, she could not be regarded as a wife. She could only be a concubine. Moreover, with such a big matter, Qin Huaiyong could not afford to lose face. At most, he would give her the position of a concubine. At that time, even if old grandma came down from the mountain, it would be too late. If Shui Rulin was just a concubine, he could do whatever he wanted with her in the future. Even if old grandma wanted to protect Shui Rulin's health was not something that could be protected easily. Is the person you chose okay? Madame D said and looked at Nanny Zhou worriedly. Don't worry, madam. My nephew is a reliable person. Even if something happens, madam will not be involved. His family and I can only be regarded as a distant relative. We haven't been in contact for many years. But I used to feel sorry for him and helped him when he was young. So I know him very well. Nanny Zhou patted her chest and promised. That's good. This time the accident has nothing to do with me and I don't intend to intervene. You can give the general whatever he wants in the mansion. Remember, don't stop him. I want to see how he wants to get married this time. Madame D said with a cold face and gritted teeth. She had prepared everything for Qin Huaiyong, but if there were any other problems in this marriage, it would have nothing to do with her. Yes, madam, I understand. Nanny Zhou understood tacitly and said. When they were talking, a servant girl ran into the yard in a hurry. Hearing that Madame D and Nanny Zhou were talking in the room, she ran to the door and said loudly, Madam, please go to pick up old grandma. Has she come back? Came back. The two people in the room were stunned. After looking at each other, Nanny Zhou asked in surprise. It was impossible for someone to come back. How could it be possible? Chapter 80. Mother, why didn't you use the carriage from our mansion? After Qin Huaiyong helped old grandma to get off the carriage, he looked at the nun who got off before old grandma, and his face was full of surprise. The carriage is broken. Old grandma had a good rest, and her face was not bad. Broken? What happened? Qin Huaiyong was stunned for a moment, and frowned. He had a bad feeling. I don't know either. I only heard that when Zhuozhuo went to look at the carriages, she happened to see that one of the carriage's wheels had slipped off. What was even more coincidental was that the carriage with the broken wheel had smashed all the other carriages in our mansion. I almost couldn't come and preside over your marriage with Rulin tomorrow. The old madam said in an indifferent tone. Qin Huaiyong's face changed, and when he was about to say something he suddenly heard Madame D's voice from outside. Mother, you finally came. Just now the carriage driver came back and said that the carriage was broken, and I was going to find another carriage to pick you up. After saying this, Madame D suddenly rushed into the door and wiped her face with a handkerchief. It could be seen that she left in a hurry. You already know that mother's carriage was broken? Qin Huaiyong said to Madame D with an unkind face. Why didn't I know? General, I was in a hurry to find another carriage for mother, and I forgot to tell you. I originally wanted to find a suitable carriage, and then go up the mountain with you overnight to pick mother up. Madame D smiled with a happy face. Fortunately, the master of Jingxin Monastery not only has a carriage, but also has someone who can drive the carriage, otherwise it would be troublesome. She had already inquired clearly on the way here, and now seeing a nun standing beside old grandma, how could she not know that it was the master of Jingxin Monastery who spoiled things? She gritted her teeth in hatred, but had to pretend to be grateful. Qin Wanru smiled on the side and looked at Madame D's embarrassed look. Things happened one after another. Even if her father trusted Madame D before, his trust in her would be discounted now. If there were no practical measures, Qin Huaiyong would not believe her, and she could not send him away with just a few words. Sure enough, Qin Huaiyong's next words made the smile on Madame D's face stiff. What did you do? Where did you borrow the carriage? When are you going to tell me that we're going up the mountain to pick up my mother? Qin Huaiyong's questions were thrown out one after another in annoyance. Madame D's stiff face could not be seen at all. Nanny Zhou hurriedly helped Madame D to explain, General, it just happened. Madame and I are discussing to borrow a carriage from another madam who is on good terms with us. The best carriage in our mansion belongs to old grandma. Now it's broken and we can't take it. Which family is B? If it had been in the past, Qin Huaiyong would have been satisfied with what she had said. But now, he had no intention of giving in. He said coldly, staring sharply at Madame D's face, and said impolitely, Madame D, don't say that you are only thinking at this stage and have not actually done anything. General, how can you say that about me? Look, I don't care about anything you do. Even if you want to marry Shui Ruolin, I will do whatever you want. I will give you whatever you want. Is there any delay? But look at your attitude towards me now. Is it possible that I, the old one, will be like this before the new one comes into the family? Madame D stammered. Suddenly she burst into tears. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and scolded Qin Huaiyong. General, I know you are angry with me because of Yuru, but what can I do? Yuru is my daughter, my biological daughter. How can I just watch her fall into such a state without doing anything? I am wrong, but it is also for our daughter. General, can't you understand me? Madame D became more and more aggrieved as she said. She raised her face and looked at Qin Huaiyong with tears in her eyes. General, I have never done anything wrong when I was with you. But I did make a mistake on Yuru's matter. But General, you can't completely destroy my past. I gave up my life in the capital city and followed you to live such a life of distrust. It seemed that she remembered what she had suffered in the past. Madame D cried so hard that she almost became a tearful person. She was a miss from an aristocratic family, but she didn't break the engagement and married Qin Huaiyong. This matter was indeed worth mentioning in front of Qin Huaiyong. After all, it was not a good marriage for Qin Huaiyong in front of Duke Yong's mansion at that time. Her words implied that she had married a man of low status at that time. As soon as she said this, Qin Huaiyong's face eased a little, and he was no longer aggressive. Mother, don't you like Aunt Shui? Seeing that she deliberately changed the topic and talked about something that made Qin Huaiyong feel grateful to Duke Yong's mansion, Qin Wanru raised her beautiful eyes and asked with a little naivety on her face. Qin Huaiyong's face changed greatly after hearing her words. He looked at Madame D suspiciously. Could it be that Madame D's crying was just to distract his attention? When Nanny Duan came to report, he had already sent someone to deal with it. He knew that someone secretly targeted Shui Ruolin, and the most suspicious person was Madame D. However, before he could find out the truth, the carriage was destroyed. The carriage was destroyed, of course. His mother couldn't go down the mountain. If Madame D used this to make trouble tomorrow, and combined with the smashing of the bridal sedan chair, He would have no time to deal with the affairs in the mansion if he had to explain to others. At that time, Shui Rulin came in, but her status didn't follow. In fact, the result was self-evident. Sure enough, all these things were caused by Madame D behind. Suddenly, the matter that Madame D sent someone to plot against Qin Wanru flashed in his mind, and the coldness in the corner of his eyes overflowed uncontrollably. Did he have any thoughts about this woman? He was almost cheated by her again just now. Wanru, I know you don't like me, and I know you have been wronged because of your big sister. But don't be angry. I will apologize to you. I just hope you won't go against me in the future. Now I just want to atone for my sins. Madame D felt bad in her heart, and wiped her tears with a handkerchief. She looked at Qin Wanru and was about to kneel to her, as if she regretted doing something wrong and now Qin Wanru could do whatever she wanted. Qin Wanru couldn't stand it when Madame D wanted to kneel. She hurriedly turned away, and a neat old maid beside old grandma hurried to help her. But this time, Madame D seemed to really want to kneel to apologize. Even if the old maid pulled her, she still wanted to kneel. It was a mess of pulling and pulling. Grandma, are you tired? Do you want to take a rest first? Qin Wanru retreated to old grandma and whispered to her, frowning. Old grandma understood. She reached out and pressed her head, leaned back weakly, and closed her eyes. She whispered to Qin Wanru, Shuashua, help me into the inner room to rest. This is a mess and I really don't have the strength to listen to it. Let your father solve it himself. After saying this, she coughed heavily. Seeing old grandma's weak look, and looking at Madame D's incessant noise, Qin Huaiyong was angry. He reached out and slammed the table, making the tea set on the table jump up and make a crisp sound. Are you done? If you're, go back. Don't deliberately make any more trouble. He thought of all the things Madame D had done, and the more he looked at her, the more he disliked her. General Madame D, who was in the middle of making a scene, was startled by Qin Huaiyong and stuttered. You should stay in your own yard tomorrow and don't come out. In case of any accidents later, Qin Huaiyong said coldly. Things happened one after another, and every one of them seemed to be related to Madame D. Even if there was no evidence, he could guess that she was the one who did it, and she would always be the one who benefited. If it wasn't for what happened in Jingxin Monastery, Qin Huaiyong might not think that she was the one who did all these things. Now he realized that since she was so vicious that she would even kidnap Qin Wanru, what else would she not do? Someone secretly plotted against Shui Rulin and deliberately smashed the carriage so that old grandma could not go down the mountain to preside over tomorrow's marriage. It was easy to say that Madame D was responsible for it. General, how could you do this to me? Madame D was shocked. If she couldn't attend the marriage tomorrow, what would others say about her? How could she have the face to visit other mansions in the future? Someone invite Madame to have a rest. Let her have a good rest these days. Qin Huaiyong said with a livid face. Hearing what he said, two inferior old maids came to old grandma and pulled Madame D out. Nanny Zhou wanted to pull them away, but when she saw Qin Huaiyong's face, she didn't dare to go forward. She could only follow Madame D and persuade her while chasing after her. The people brought by Madame D also hurriedly followed them, and the room suddenly became quiet. Mother, I'll have to trouble you with tomorrow's matters. Qin Huaiyong took a deep breath and said again. Don't worry. Although I'm old, I can still manage for one day. But what about in the future? Old grandma sighed, and her heart was also full of confusion. In the future, let cousin Rulin manage. Qin Huaiyong's eyebrows twitched. At this time he had made up his mind. He looked at Qin Wanru beside him and made up his mind. Madame D couldn't get divorced, but it didn't mean that he had to serve her like before. For the sake of Duke Yong's mansion, he could give her the dignity of a legal wife, but only the dignity in the eyes of outsiders. Aren't you afraid of what Duke Yong's mansion will say? In fact, old grandma also had worries. So for so many years, when facing Madame D, she could only give in with the excuse that she didn't manage. Mother, don't worry. Qin Huaiyong comforted old grandma. It's good that you know what you're doing. There is no problem with Rulin, but Old grandma still had some scruples, and she didn't continue. Father, will Duke Yong embarrass you and Aunt Shui because of this? Qin Wanru said appropriately. She frowned and looked worried. Father, will Duke Yong embarrass you and Aunt Shui? Qin Huaiyong immediately understood. They were going to return to the capital city soon, and at that time, Duke Yong's mansion would definitely ask for an explanation. Qin Wanru's words reminded Qin Huaiyong, and he immediately promised old grandma, Mother, don't worry. There are some things I will make early preparations. Duke Yong's mansion would definitely seek revenge if they mistreated the daughter of Duke Yong's mansion. In this case, witnesses, evidence, and as for the person who wanted to ruin this time, after he found out who he was, he would also send him to the capital city. Chapter 81. Qin Huaiyong was going to get married again? This was big news among the officials in Jiangzhou. There was too much news about Ningyuan Army General's mansion recently, and all of them were very strange. So when they heard that Qin Huaiyong was going to get married, many people kept a wait-and-see attitude. Madame D was the noble lady of Duke Yong's mansion in the capital city, and nobody could bully her. At first, people didn't understand why Qin Huaiyong would do such a thing to make Duke Yong's mansion angry. But after the rumor that came out of Jingxin Monastery that day was spread to the whole Jiangzhou city, people suddenly understood Qin Huaiyong. It was not good to marry a wife, and because of Duke Yong's mansion in the capital city, it was not convenient for him to divorce her, so it was reasonable to marry an old mother and young daughter to take care of him. Moreover, he was framed by Madame D and had to marry into the general's mansion. Ningyuan Army General was a good man, but he had no choice but to have such a wife. Thinking of Qin Huaiyong's suffering, many officials in Jiangzhou felt wronged for him. Who could imagine that Madame D, who looked gentle and elegant, was actually so vicious? Because she didn't like Second Miss, who was not her biological daughter, she even sent people to kidnap Second Mississippi. How vicious was she to do such a thing? Even though she was not her biological daughter, she had always treated her as her biological mother. For a moment, many people felt pity for Qin Wanru, especially some madams who had met Qin Wanru. They all thought that Second Miss Qin was naive and cute, but in general, she was a child. Although she was already 11 years old, she was still very childish. However, even though he was very childish, he was still a likable child. Everyone thought that Madame D was too vicious. Especially Madame Li, the wife of Magistrate Qi, talked about this matter everywhere she went. On the one hand, she lamented that Second Miss Qin was so pitiful to have such a mother, and on the other hand, she scolded Madame D for being vicious. She didn't want other people's daughters to have a good life when her own daughter couldn't have a good life. Second Miss Qin was like this, and so was her own daughter. They were all killed by Madame D's vicious intention. When Qin Wanru heard the rumors outside, she was very calm. She had asked Nanny Duan to send someone to spread the rumor outside, and what she saw in Jingxin Monastery said, so as to spread the rumor to as many people as possible. As a result, everyone was happy to see Qin Huaiyong marrying Shui Rulin. No one thought that Qin Huaiyong had any evidence to be used against him for marrying Shui Rulin. Even Madame Li, the wife of Magistrate Jiang, repeatedly said that Shui Rulin was a gentle person. She was framed and had to marry into General's mansion because of Madame Dowager and Qin Wanru. If it were not for Madame D, she would still be a widow and had few desires. With Madame Li's testimony, everyone had a better impression of Shui Rulin's character. Early in the morning, Qin Huaiyong took the bridal sedan to pick up the guests. There were many guests in the inner courtyard of the mansion. Madame Dowager was in good spirits and presided over the wedding in the backyard. Qin Wanru helped her to receive the young ladies of similar age. Madame Dowager was very thoughtful. She was afraid that the young ladies would feel uncomfortable when all the madams were there, so she specially arranged for Qin Wanru to receive the young ladies in another flower hall. Everyone thought that Qin Huaiyong's marriage was a good thing. There were many people and many young ladies. In Jiangzhou, Ningyuan Army General and Magistrate Qi had the highest status. Qi Rongji didn't come, so Qin Wanru's status was the noblest. There were many young ladies who were friends with her in the past. Most of the young ladies who were friends with Chin Yuru didn't come today. But they didn't come, and the young ladies who came felt very comfortable. Second miss, are you really not your mother's biological daughter? A young lady sitting next to Chin Wanru blinked twice, leaned over and asked curiously. She blinked her eyes and looked at Chin Wanru. Chin Wanru knew her. She was the youngest daughter of Yu Xing, one of Qin Huaiyong's deputy generals. Her name was Yu Yuqing. She was really young, a few months younger than Chin Wanru. She was only 10 years old, but she looked taller than Chin Wanru. When they stood together, Chin Wanru was half a head shorter than her, so she looked like a younger sister. There were too many rumors about Chin Wanru's background. In fact, many young ladies present were very curious about it. But they were too embarrassed to ask, so the youngest Yu Yuqing took the lead. At this time, 7 or 8 young ladies of the same age blinked their eyes and looked at Chin Wanru curiously. Really not. Chin Wanru shook her head. Her white and tender face wrinkled, and her pink lips were tightly pressed together. She looked a little pitiful. Then, who is your biological mother? She was too young to know much. Yu Yuqing couldn't help but ask another question that everyone wanted to ask. I don't know. Chin Wanru shook her head. The 2 buns on her head shook twice, and then she lowered her head. How could you not know? Didn't you ask your father? General must know, right? Yu Yuqing became more and more curious. She blinked her eyes and continued to rub salt on the wound immaturely. Although the young ladies around strained their ears to listen, they were sighing in their hearts. After all, she was too young to know anything. There is no trace of my mother's life in the mansion. I have asked many people, but they all said they had never seen my mother. It seemed that I suddenly appeared in the mansion. Chin Wanru lowered her head and looked listless. How could it be? Several young ladies couldn't help exclaiming. In fact, everyone guessed that Chin Wanru's mother was a concubine of Qin Huaiyong. Qin Huaiyong didn't live in Jiangzhou before. When he came to Jiangzhou, he took 2 daughters with him. So no one really knew Chin Wanru's background. It's true. I don't know who my mother is, what is her identity, and why she left me. Chin Wanru lowered her head slightly, and her voice became lower and lower. But it didn't hinder the hearing of those young ladies who strained their ears to listen. Hearing her words, everyone looked at each other. Are you not General Qin's biological daughter? A young lady thought for a while and suddenly said on a whim. No way. Chin Wanru raised her head. Her eyes were blank and ignorant. She looked a little dull, as if she was stunned by such a big guess. General Qin loves second miss so much. How could she not be his biological daughter? Another young lady immediately stood on Chin Wanru's side and spoke for her. She just found out that she was not Madame D's biological daughter. If she said that she was not General Qin's biological daughter, how pitiful second Miss Qin would be. I'm just guessing and talking nonsense. Don't take it seriously. The main thing is that you don't have a biological mother. It's really suspicious. Second Miss Qin, is there anything special about your mother? The previous young lady also felt that her guess was too far from reality. She smiled awkwardly and hurriedly comforted Chin Wanru. I don't know. Chin Wanru shook her head. It's really strange. How could she suddenly lose her biological mother? Yu Yuqing murmured on the side, and suddenly her eyes lit up. Second Miss Qin, are you an abandoned child that General Qin picked up and raised? Chin Wanru raised her head, and her beautiful eyes turned red. I'm talking nonsense. I'm talking nonsense. I'm just talking nonsense. Yu Yuqing saw her wronged look and hurriedly waved her hand. Well, let's stop guessing here. Today is a big day for General's mansion. Second Miss Qin will have a mother in the future. I heard that Miss Shui is gentle and will take good care of second Miss Qin in the future. Let's not worry about it. Some older and more mature young ladies came out to smooth things over. Today was a big day for General Qin's mansion, and they shouldn't make second Miss Qin sad. Otherwise, they would be scolded when they go home. Immediately, many people comforted Chin Wanru. After a while, Chin Wanru was comforted by them and happily took them to the garden. Sometimes guessing was close to the truth. Although it was inconvenient for the young ladies to say anything now, it didn't prevent them from telling their father what happened today. Qin Wanru had doubts about her life experience, and she didn't know how to find out. So she threw a golden hook first. Not to mention whether she could catch a fish or not, she just wanted to send a message. At this time, it was said that the bridal sedan chair was in front of the door. All the young ladies wanted to watch the fun, so Qin Wanru took them out from the backyard and secretly went to the front yard. There were many people at this time, so no one noticed that several young ladies had sneaked out. But even if they saw it, it was not a big deal. On a big day, the rules were relaxed. Qin Wanru stood behind a pillar and watched Qin Huaiyong holding a red silk and walking in with Shui Rulin. She rubbed the handkerchief in her hand, and a trace of deep and excited flashed in her eyes. In her previous life, Shui Rulin also fell into such a miserable situation because of her. This time, she wanted to see her happy and protect her to give birth to her children. Qin Huaiyong's stern face in the past showed a gentle smile. It could be seen that he was also satisfied with Shui Rulin. When they entered the hall, they bowed in the singing of the bridesmaid. Old grandma on the high seat saw them bowing to her, and her eyes turned red. Then she smiled, and it could be seen that she was in a good mood. After that, the newlyweds were sent in. Old grandma reached out and waved to Qin Wanru, who was hiding on the side. Qin Wanru smiled and ran over. "Zhuozhuo, why are you hiding?" Old grandma said with a smile. It seemed that she was in a good mood and coughed less. "To see father and Aunt Shui." Qin Wanru leaned on old grandma and said with a face full of admiration, "Don't call her Aunt Shui, call her mother." Old grandma patted her head and said, "How should I call her before?" Qin Wanru pouted and hesitated for a moment. "I have discussed it with your father. Just call her Madam." Speaking of Madame D, the smile on old grandma's face faded a little. "Okay, Grandma, Zhuozhuo will listen to Grandma." Qin Wanru smiled, and her little face was like a blooming flower. At that moment, people felt that she really smiled from the heart. Chapter 82. Qin Wanru helped Madame Dowager into the flower hall and then came out again. Standing outside the flower hall, Qin Wanru took a breath. There were many guests today and Madame Dowager was not in good health. Qin Wanru was worried that Madame Dowager could not hold on. Fortunately, it was almost noon and the wedding banquet was about to begin. After the banquet, the guests would basically go back. Jiangzhou was slightly different from other places. The wedding banquet was held at noon and only some close friends would stay until the evening. The number of guests was relatively small. Second Mississippi, someone was pulling her clothes and the voice was sharp and thin. Qin Wanru looked back in surprise and her eyes fell on the servant behind her. The servant in the clothes of General's mansion wore a red-lined jacket today. She could tell at a glance that he was different from the servants brought by other guests. The servant in front of her was a little familiar. "Second miss, our master wants you to go over." The servant lowered his voice and pointed to the right front. Qin Wanru saw another servant in that direction. Seeing the handsome face of a proud young man who walked out of the ink landscape, Qin Wanru narrowed her eyes immediately. What clothes was he wearing? "Second miss, hurry up. Our master is going to be angry." Xiao Xuanzi lowered his voice and pointed to his child whose cheeks were slightly puffed up. Qin Wanru looked around and turned around helplessly. Chu Luchen stood in the corridor, and there was a small rockery under the corridor, which happened to block half of his figure. In addition, he was wearing the clothes of a manservant of the general's mansion, so it was not very abrupt for him to come and go in the inner court in such a busy situation today. Along the way, he just slightly lowered his head. With Xiao Xuanzi's clever answers, no one found that they were two outsiders. "Child, why are you here?" Qin Wanru came to him and asked in a low voice. "But I can't come? What are you hiding in General's mansion that you can't let me see?" Chu Luchen impatiently reached out and pulled Qin Wanru to sit beside him. The railing in the corridor was a very leisurely place. Qin Wanru did not expect that he would suddenly reach out his hand. She staggered a few steps and sat down heavily. She sat so fast that it hurt a little, and her beautiful willowy eyebrows knitted together. "What? Are you unhappy? How dare you disrespect me?" Chu Luchun snorted and raised his handsome face, looking at Qin Wanru with displeasure. Wanye, I don't have time to accompany you now. Only Grandma and I can receive you in the backyard. Qin Wanru said in a low voice patiently. Am I not a guest? Chu Luchun said with an unfriendly look. His words made Qin Wanru speechless. After a while, she looked at the servant's clothes on him. She really didn't think that a man who wore a servant's clothes and sneaked into the mansion was her guest. Your Highness, your clothes. Where did it come from? Qin Wanru knew that she might not be able to leave for a while. Ask Xiao Xuanzi to get it. Chu Luchun said matter-of-factly. He stretched out his hand and pulled his clothes with some disgust. The manservant's clothes were messy and crooked, which made him look even less like a well-behaved manservant. Why didn't you tell Father that you wanted to come to see the fun? Father didn't allow you to see it? Qin Wanru looked at him in confusion. Although it was a secret that Chu Luchun came to Jiangzhou, Father must know about it. As for why he said that he wanted to see the fun, it was obvious that he didn't have anything important to do. What else could he do if he didn't want to see the fun? Every time he wanted to see the fun, he would find a place with a wide view early. It should be the same this time. I want to see it by myself secretly. Chu Luchun leaned back and became lazy. The servant's clothes on him looked a little more elegant. How could he enter the yard without being discovered? Qin Wanru felt strange. How did he look like a servant? What do you want to do next, Wang Ye? Qin Wanru bit her pink lips and asked carefully. Since he was here, he should solve the problem that he could go back after watching the fun. I want to see the bridal chamber. Chu Luchun stretched out his hand and flicked his sleeves. He squinted at Qin Wanru and smiled gently and politely. However, the meaning of his words was far from being gentle and polite. Xiao Xuanzi was so shocked that his eyes were wide open. Master, you don't follow the rules. You can't go. Follow the rules? Then when can I go to see the bridal chamber according to the rules? Chu Luchun smiled and his voice was light and sarcastic. Qin Wanru didn't know how to continue. He was so obsessed with watching the bridal chamber that he felt so wronged. Will you take me with you or not? I remember that you promised to take me on a tour around Jiangzhou. Chu Luchun blinked his beautiful eyes and said accusingly, Are you going to break your promise? Break my promise? Qin Wanru really didn't dare to. Even if she wanted to, she didn't dare to say so directly. He groaned in his heart. He was already busy enough today, and this person was just here to cause trouble. However, he just couldn't be coaxed away. Now that he had been pulled over, if he didn't bring him over, he wouldn't let him pass through the door. In fact, she would rather accompany her grandmother to entertain the guests than accompany this arrogant and beautiful young man. This person looked weak and harmless, but who knew when he would suddenly cause trouble? Who knew if he would mess up her father's wedding banquet? Well, since you don't want to, I don't care. I will go and see it myself. Chu Luchun didn't seem to be surprised by her reaction. He stood up and shook his crooked servant clothes. He was going to walk forward, as if he was going to enter the busy crowd in front. Qin Wanru was shocked and subconsciously pulled his sleeves. Child, wait a minute. What? You don't let me go? Chu Luchun squinted at her and his voice became lazy. Child, I will go with you. Qin Wanru gritted her teeth and made up her mind. She would rather keep an eye on this troublemaker than let him get into trouble in her mansion. Otherwise, he would cause other troubles. It was better for her to be here than not. Thinking about this, Qin Wanru also stood up and pulled Chu Luchun's sleeves to retreat. Let's go there. There are fewer people there, and it can lead to the bridal chamber. Okay. Chu Luchun smiled. Chu Luchun smiled. He seemed to be much more obedient, like a well-behaved boy. Of course, Qin Wanru knew that these were all appearances. This man was not a well-behaved and obedient master. No matter what kind of beautiful and gentle expression he showed on the surface, it was just to confuse people. If people really dared to provoke him, they must be extremely poisonous. She pulled Chu Luchun to hide behind the cloister. In this position, even if they stood outside the cloister, no one would necessarily find them. Child, you can go and have a look, but after that, you must leave immediately, okay? Qin Wanru was still worried, so she specially told him and began to talk about conditions with him. Okay, it's all up to you. Chu Luchan was rarely easy to talk to. The expression on his face was always smiling, and it seemed that he was in a good mood. Child, can you have a look at the back of the room? It is against the rules for a servant to enter the bridal chamber directly. Qin Wanru looked up and down Chu Luchan and said, in the past, servants were not allowed to enter the backyard. Even if there were special circumstances, they could only enter the backyard with the master's order. Of course, Qin Wanru was excluded. After all, she was still young and ignorant. In the past, when she wanted to ask Nanny Yu's son Wang Feng to do something, she had to ask Nanny Yu or Qing Yu to pass the message to the outer court. Back of the room? What are you looking at? Chu Luchan was unhappy again. He pulled his sleeves, which were pulled by Qin Wanru, and wanted to leave. Qin Wanru hurriedly pulled his sleeves tightly. Child, if you wear the clothes of a servant girl, I can take you to see the bridal chamber from the front door. What? You want me to wear women's clothes? Chu Liuchen's delicate and handsome face was a little dark. Qin Wanru suddenly felt that if this child wore women's clothes and dressed up, he should also be extremely beautiful. Looking at his pale lips, he might be a pitiful beauty who made people feel sorry for him. For a moment, she couldn't help smiling and couldn't help laughing. In fact, with his color, it was quite suitable for him to dress up as a woman. What? Do you want to see me dress up as a woman? Chu Luchan smiled very gently, with a trace of his own elegance and nobility. No, how dare I? I just think that if we want to go to the bridal chamber from the front, we can only do this. If father finds out, I'm afraid that even child can't attend the ceremony. Qin Wanru immediately became serious and said seriously. However, a pair of beautiful curved eyes and a clear smile at the bottom of her eyes made people know that she was actually smiling at this time. The corners of her lips were curved, and her long eyelashes fluttered twice, revealing a light pink jade-like skin. A smile rose from the bottom of her heart, not the kind of smile that she used to politely greet people in the past. It made people feel comfortable to see it. Xiao Xuanzi on the side looked at his master anxiously, for fear that he would get angry. If he really got angry, no one could stop him. It was estimated that only the words of the Empress Dowager in the palace would be heard by his master. But now they were not in the palace, and it was impossible to find the Empress Dowager. He was really afraid that his master would make trouble regardless of anything. What can we see in the back? Chu Luchan smiled, and his eyes also narrowed. He was not angry, which made Xiao Xuanzi, who was on guard on the side, secretly breathed a sigh of relief. You may see a lot, and you are not afraid of being found out. After you see the bridal chamber, you can even go to other interesting places to see. Qin Wanru raised her small face and said seriously. As for other interesting places, of course, she was just talking about it. Okay, I will go to the back with you to see the bridal chamber. As for other interesting places, take me to see them later. Chu Luchan bent his lips, moved his head close to Qin Wanru's ear, and whispered, You have to guarantee that I have not played in other interesting places. Chapter 83. The location of the bridal chamber was the courtyard where Shui Rulin used to live. The courtyards of Madame D and Madame D were located on both sides of Old Grandma's courtyard. In the backyard of General's mansion, the largest main courtyard was Madame D's courtyard, which could be regarded as the courtyard in the middle. Old Grandma lived in the courtyard on the left, and Shui Rulin's courtyard was a little further to the left of Old Grandma's courtyard. In fact, it was already very far to the left. Shui Rulin herself still wanted to live in the courtyard where she had always lived. Although it was a little too far and too quiet, Shui Rulin liked it very much. Qin Wanru was very familiar with Shui Rulin's courtyard. Her own courtyard was on the right rear of Shui Rulin's courtyard. In the past, she was also close to Shui Rulin and liked to go to Shui Rulin's courtyard when she had nothing to do. It was closer to Shui Rulin's courtyard from Qin Wanru's courtyard through the back door. In order to facilitate Qin Wanru's access, the back door of Shui Rulin's courtyard was often open. Qin Wanru took Chu Luchan to the back door after a big circle. Qin Yu stepped forward and pushed it gently. The door was indeed open. They then entered the courtyard from the back door. There were not many people in Shui Ruolin's courtyard in the past. This time, there were a few new people and some helpers. However, they were all busy in the front, and no one noticed that there were several people coming from the back of the bridal chamber. Qin Wanru never thought that she would be so unruly as to lie on the back window of the bridal chamber. She was so short that she couldn't see clearly. Qin Yu half held her up and let her lie on the window. Chu Luchen was one step ahead of her. He leaned on the window and watched with relish. When Qin Wanru climbed to the window and looked inside, the look on her face became strange. She really didn't think there was anything to see. It was very quiet in the bridal chamber. Shui Ruolin sat on the red wedding bed, and the red veil on her head had been taken off. There was no one in the bridal chamber at this time, only 2 serving maids with red eyes. Then there was nothing else? There was really nothing to see. The back window where they were at was hung with a gauze curtain. Their faces were close to the gauze curtain, so the people inside did not pay attention and would not find them at the back window. Qin Wanru watched for a while and found that the people inside did not move at all. Shui Ruolin lowered her head and was very quiet. The serving maid also did not move. Qin Wanru really felt that it was not nice at all. She reached out and gently pulled Chu Liuchen's sleeves. Chu Luchen ignored her, so she pulled again. She used so much strength that Qin Yu couldn't stand it and swayed. Qin Wanru hurriedly reached out and grabbed the windowsill. She turned back and signaled Qin Yu to carry her down. She didn't want to see it anymore. Qin Yu understood. She held her waist carefully and moved down slowly. "General!" The servant girl's voice suddenly came from the room. Qin Wanru panicked and almost fell down. She hurriedly reached out to grab something to stabilize her body. Why was his father here at this time? Shouldn't he be accompanying the guests at the wedding banquet? In her panic, she didn't care what she was pulling on and just pulled on it with all her might. Chu Luchen was watching with great interest. Suddenly, his clothes were pulled at his waist. He didn't pay attention, and his body was pulled backward. It was too late for Xiao Xuanzi to catch him, and the 2 of them fell heavily. "Who is it?" Qin Huayong's roar came from the room, and then heavy footsteps came to the back window. Qin Wanru hurriedly pulled Chu Luchen and climbed up. She trotted a few steps and jumped into the empty fish tank on the wall of the back courtyard. Qin Yu and Xiao Xuanzi followed suit and also jumped into another empty fish tank. Shui Ruolin had 2 large fish tanks, which were given to her by Qin Wanru. There was an illusion in this. Qin Wanru once went out and saw a family raising water lilies in a large fish tank. There were fish under the water lilies, which were very beautiful and elegant. Qin Wanru was tempted and planned to raise a few tanks in spring. She especially persuaded old grandma to buy 4 large tanks. 2 were given to Shui Ruolin, and the other 2 were left in her yard. But it was not the best time to raise water lilies, so they were empty now. Such a large tank was just right for 2 people to squeeze in. Qin Wanru's hand was still holding Chu Liuchen's sleeve tightly. She leaned her head against the side of the tank and listened nervously to the voices outside. The sound of the window being opened was followed by footsteps. It was Shui Ruolin's soft voice. "Cousin, what's wrong?" "Nothing, I may have misheard." Qin Huayong's eyes fell on the empty backyard and he frowned. Did he really mishear the sound just now? Shui Ruolin actually heard the sound, so she followed them. Hearing Qin Huayong's words, she also looked out of the window. It was very quiet outside and there was nothing. She must have misheard. Qin Huayong calmly reached out and pulled down the curtain. "Cousin, you can eat first. I'll ask the kitchen to prepare some light food for you, which is similar to what you usually eat." "Thank you, cousin." Shui Ruolin blushed. From now on, he was no longer her cousin, but her husband. Looking at her blushing face, Qin Huayong's heart skipped a beat. He reached out to hold her hand and led her back to the bed to sit down. "I'm going to entertain guests later. I don't have time to accompany you. If you're tired, you can take a rest." I know." Shui Ruolin lowered her head and blushed. Although she had been married, the person in front of her was different. He was Qin Huayong, who grew up with her. Some childhood memories that were unknown to others also came to her mind. They were somewhat familiar, but also somewhat strange. But whether they were familiar or strange memories, they all made her feel shy. Rulin, I have to trouble you with the backyard in the future. Don't blame me. Qin Huaiyong held Shui Rulin's hand and sighed. Cousin, I will do my best to help you manage the backyard. Shui Rulin said, and I will take good care of Mother and Wanru. Nanny Duan had already told Shui Rulin what had happened before and revealed Madame D's vicious plot. So she also knew that Madame D was grounded by Qin Huaiyong after the incident and she was not allowed to show her face in public on today's big day. Mother is old and Wanru is still young. Madame D can raise her. Qin Huaiyong said again. There were some things that he wanted to make clear now, so as to avoid trouble in the future. Yuru is Madame D's daughter after all. Besides, Duke Yong's mansion has the grace of marrying her. With these things, even he had to be scrupulous. Besides, there were some meanings related to the background of the officialdom. Qin Huaiyong was a little inconvenient to tell Shui Rulin in detail, so he could only vaguely blame it on the kindness of marrying her. As Qin Huaiyong said, he lowered his head in shame. He also had a great selfishness. Cousin, don't say it. I understand it all. Shui Rulin said softly. There was no trace of grievance in her expression. She was dignified and quiet. Now that I have married you, I will naturally follow your lead. At home, I will be filial to Mother and take care of Wanru. I will listen to you outside. For you I should also stay. Hearing Shui Rulin's reasonable words, Qin Huaiyong felt relieved. He reached out to hold Shui Rulin in his arms and didn't know what to say for a moment. He had scruples and selfishness. There were some words that he really couldn't say. Hearing that Shui Rulin was so considerate of him and didn't aggressively ask for a clear answer, he was very grateful. Originally, he had a lot of affection for Shui Rulin. This time, he married a beautiful woman who was so reasonable. Qin Huaiyong's stern face couldn't help but show a smile. He even didn't care so much about the sound that he heard from the back window just now. Qin Huaiyong and Shui Rulin talked in a low voice. This time, because the topic was not so serious, their voices were very light. Qin Wanru in the big vat couldn't hear clearly. She put her head on the vat and wanted to listen, but her body was suddenly pulled down and hit Chu Luchin. Qin Wanru was shocked and hurriedly turned back. Her pink cherry lips rubbed Chu Luchin's handsome face that came close. Both of them were stunned for a moment. Qin Wanru hurriedly turned back, and her little face suddenly turned red. She reached out and subconsciously pinched Chu Luchin. A pinch. Hey, why did you pinch me? Chu Luchin was not happy and whispered. He reached out to grab Qin Wanru's little hand that was messing around and shook it hard. His grip was so strong that Qin Wanru was so painful that her tears were about to fall down. She turned her head and looked at Chu Luchin angrily. Her other hand went to hold Chu Luchin's big hand. Seeing Qin Wanru's tight little face and her beautiful eyes were enshrouded with tears, Chu Luchin was stunned for a moment and immediately understood. His hand slightly loosened, but he still didn't let go. He pulled her hand again and moved his head closer. Has your father liked this bride for a long time? What? Qin Wanru's hand still felt painful. Because of the pain, she was also bold and said angrily. I just want to ask. I feel strange. Chu Luchin turned his head and his voice became lower and lower. His handsome and flawless face was too close to her, which made Qin Wanru feel very uncomfortable. She reached out her other hand and pushed his pale handsome face, indicating him to stay away from her. Chu Luchin ignored her and reached out to grab her other hand. Both of her hands were held in his big hand. Qin Wanru struggled twice but failed. She didn't dare to move violently again. What's strange? Qin Wanru pursed her mouth and said, I just feel strange. It shouldn't be like this. Chu Luchin turned his head and looked at Qin Wanru's pink little face. He increasingly felt that her complexion was better. Her eyes could be so dark, with the mist that had not dissipated just now. Her lips could be so delicate and bright, which was completely different from his pale face. He liked this color very much. It would be great if he also had such a bright color. On that pair of jet black eyes, there were long and curly eyelashes like brushes. He stretched out his hand and pressed it in front of her eyes. Sure enough, he felt the soft feeling of the eyelashes brushing against his palm. This little girl's eyelashes were really long. He raised his hand and touched Qin Wanru's beautiful hair. Chu Luchen felt so comfortable that his eyes almost narrowed. Sure enough, it felt the same as touching his cat. It was very comfortable. It was also as beautiful as the mutated cat he had raised. What are you doing? Qin Wanru didn't know when he covered her eyes with his hands and touched her head. She struggled with her hands and tried to widen her watery eyes. She stared at Chu Luchen fiercely to express her anger. However, the anger expressed by her beautiful eyes was not deterrent at all. Chu Luchen felt that it was the same as his cat's eyes. It was the kind of feeling that she was very angry but couldn't do anything to him. Chapter 84. Chu Luchen reached out his hand and pressed her long hair. Looking at her big wet eyes looking up at him, he felt that they were more and more alike. It had been a while since he left the capital city, and he missed his cat very much. No wonder the angry little girl in front of him also looked like her. His light-colored lips slowly curled up, and his eyes and eyebrows curved into crescents as he smiled. Qin Wanru opened her eyes wide in surprise. She felt that she had seen a ghost. She felt that Prince Chen's smile was warm. This gloomy, black-bellied, and temperamental sick and arrogant prince made her feel warm at this moment. She felt that she must have been dazzled. She closed her eyes and opened them again. At this time, the sound inside had stopped. She heard Qin Huayong leaving, and then the heavy footsteps went away. It was quiet in her ears. "Your Highness, can we go now?" Qin Wanru said, reaching out and moving her hand which was held tightly. The vat was quite big, and in fact, they did not need to be so close to each other. This made her very uncomfortable. "Don't worry, it's good here," Chu Luchen said lazily. He leaned against the wall of the vat behind him and looked up at the sky. It was noon, and the sun was a little warm. There was no wind, so it was a good place to bask in the sun. Qin Wanru also raised her head and squinted at the sky. "What's there to look at? It's better to look at the stars at night." "Hiding in the vat at night to look at the stars?" Chu Luchen smiled and raised his eyebrows. He thought it was a good idea. When he went back to his palace, he could also put a big vat outside. At night, he could hide in it and look at the stars. Such a big starry sky did not look as lonely as seeing the whole sky. "Have you tried it?" I haven't." Qin Wanru blushed and said stubbornly. She really had tried it, not only tried it, but also tried it several times. After her rebirth, she couldn't sleep at night. She would sneak out alone and hide in the big vat in the yard. She felt very safe there. When she looked up, the starry sky was above her head. She curled up at the bottom of the vat and felt very safe. It also made her really realize that she had been reborn. She was a complete person and was not cut in half at the waist. "The next time you come to this king's palace, this king will prepare a large vat for you. You can move it to the roof to look at the stars. It will look more beautiful," Chu Luchen said with the complacency and tiredness of a teenager. At the top of the high palace hall, there was a huge fish tank beside the sharp horn of the beast. There was a head sticking out of the fish tank, looking up at the starry sky, and the solemn background of the palace hall. Qin Wanru felt that she could not think about it anymore. That scene was so beautiful and soul-stirring that she could not bear it. If this was discovered by others, what would the rumors be like? The future emperor of a country actually liked to hide in a vat in the middle of the night. This hobby would definitely make this future emperor who succeeded in seizing the throne embark on a strange path. It was a little hard to imagine, but looking at Chu Liuchen's serious eyes, Qin Wanru still lowered her head to hide the smile in her eyes. "Thank you, Prince," Qin Wanru said sensibly, no matter whether she had the chance to see it or not. "Has your father always been interested in the bride in the vat and deliberately made such a scene?" Chu Luchen touched his smooth chin thoughtfully and continued the previous topic. "Don't talk nonsense." Qin Wanru's heart skipped a beat and she suddenly raised her head. "Nonsense?" Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and showed a trace of a smile on his face. Between his raised eyebrows and eyes, there was a chill in his bones. You are so bold that you dare to say that I am talking nonsense. I dare not. Qin Wanru's face turned pale, and she hurriedly lowered her head and said sensibly. Probably because she was in the vat, she forgot for a moment that he also had the attribute of coldness and blackness. The bride in the vat is your father's cousin? Chu Luchen did not intend to pursue her crime, and a trace of dim light flashed in his eyes. At this time, he was more like the high and mighty crown prince that Qin Wanru saw at the last time, powerful, cold and ruthless, instead of the handsome young man with a bit of sickness and arrogance just now. She is my father's cousin. My Aunt Shui grew up in our mansion, and it was my grandmother who raised her. After she got married, she didn't have a child, so my grandmother brought her here. After that, she lived quietly in a corner of the backyard. If Madame didn't plot against her, she would still be my Aunt Shui. Qin Wanru explained. She had to explain, for fear that Chu Luchen would have a slight misunderstanding about Shui Ruolin, which would be disadvantageous to her in the future. Didn't your father do anything before? Chu Luchen smiled with satisfaction, with a little bit of laziness. No, my father seldom saw Aunt Shui before, and he was very polite. Although we grew up together, there was no love affair between us. Qin Wanru said carefully, and her snow-white face was full of seriousness. But the madam of the general's mansion helped them, and it seems that Ningyuan army general will benefit from it in the end. Chu Luchen said casually. His words made Qin Wanru's heart beat wildly twice, as if something was about to break out of the ground, but she immediately held it down. Your Highness, you must be joking. Your Highness, can we leave now? If someone finds out that you are with me, it is not good, is it? Moreover, you are wearing servant's clothes. Qin Wanru persuaded again, because she didn't want to be crowded here with Chu Luchen. What? Are you afraid that people will see you with a servant? Chu Luchen loosened his hand, let go of Qin Wanru's hand, pulled his clothes, and said quite complacently. Her hand was loosened, and Qin Wanru looked at her wrist which was pinched red, and was quite speechless. Didn't you just say that you will take me to a fun place? You said that it is something I have not played before. Then take me there. Chu Luchen seemed to want to stand up, with a reluctant look. Then I will go with you to have a look. Qin Wanru reached out to hold Chu Luchen. She just wanted to coax Chu Luchen to go to the back window to have a look at the bridal chamber. How could there be a fun place he had not played before? She rolled her watery eyes. Child, have you played in the vat before? Chu Luchen shook his head, and looked at Qin Wanru in the vat with disgust. Everything he did was in accordance with the rules. How could he do such an unruly thing? Since you have not, then it is naturally considered that you have not played before, right? Qin Wanru smiled proudly, and slightly raised her cherry lips, with a bit of childishness and pride. Chu Luchen laughed in a low voice, and his appearance was peerless. You don't mean to say that the place you will take me to play is this vat, do you? This? Child, don't you think it is fun? Qin Wanru murmured. Qin Wanru, you are very smart, very good, much smarter than my cat. Chu Luchen said with a smile, which was quite meaningful. But this praise shocked Qin Wanru, and her back was slightly sweating. She vigilantly looked at the beautiful young man with clear eyes, who looked harmless to both humans and beasts. Child, can't it be counted? Yes, yes, I will let you go. Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows in a good mood, and then he stood up and jumped out of the vat. Seeing that he finally went out, Qin Wanru was relieved, and reached out to the edge of the vat. Although the edge of the vat was very high for her, she still reached out and jumped out of the vat with ease. Seeing that they came out, Xiao Xuanzi and Qin Yu also jumped out of the vat. They went out from the back door together. Child, are you tired? Do you want to go back and have a rest? When they went out to a secluded place, Qin Wanru stood still and looked at Chu Liuchen's face, and it seemed that he looked worse than before. Master, you have to go back and take medicine. You can't stay here anymore. Hearing what she said, Xiao Xuanzi was shocked. He came up and saw that his master's face was weak, and his lips were almost snow-white, so he reached out to help him. Go back. Chu Luchen was rarely easy to talk to, and he nodded. Qin Wanru, send me to the back door of your mansion. So his carriage is parked at the back door? Qin Wanru thought helplessly, but looking at his face, she knew that he might really be unable to hold on. She did not dare to hesitate, and led them to take a detour to the back door. The back door was unlocked, and the old maid who guarded the back door might be busy with the servants because there were many things to do in the mansion today, so she was not here. Pushing open the unlocked back door, they saw a wide carriage parked outside. It looked ordinary, but it was too wide. The curtain were hanging on it, and the dark patterns embroidered on them were actually real gold thread embroidery. If one did not look carefully, he would not be able to see it, and would think that it was dyed. It was low-key but luxurious. Xiao Xuanzi helped Chu Luchen to get on the carriage. Seeing Chu Liuchen's weak look, Qin Wanru reached out to help him get on the carriage. When Chu Luchen got on the carriage and saw the coachman skillfully turn the horse around and leave slowly and steadily, Qin Wanru breathed a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that the prince would have an accident in the mansion, which was a responsibility that no one could afford. When the carriage disappeared, she and Qin Yu went back to the mansion and closed the door from the inside. The carriage moved slowly, and Chu Luchen, who was leaning on the couch, reached out to take a bowl of thick black medicine from Xiao Xuanzi. He took it up and drank it, and then put it down, and reached out to rub between his eyebrows. "Master, are you very tired?" Xiao Xuanzi took the bowl, looked at his master's face carefully, and asked. Chu Luchen closed his eyes and said, "Yes," in a low voice. "Master, we will go to see the master of Jingxin Monastery later, and I think it is a little effective. In the past, if you don't have a rest for such a long time, you may feel uncomfortable. What do you think, master?" Xiao Xuanzi cautiously asked about his feeling after taking the medicine. "What's the use? It is just a temporary effect." Chu Luchen closed his eyes, and his jade-like face was calm, as if he was talking about someone else's body, and he did not care about it at all. "Master, even if it is only a temporary effect, we have to try. Maybe we can really find the person that Dr. Qi said, and then your disease can be cured," Xiao Xuanzi said. This time, Chu Luchen did not even make a sound, and waved his hand, directly signaling him to shut up. Xiao Xuanzi hesitated, but still could not help but say, "Master, do you mean to go to Jingxin Monastery?" "Go." A very casual voice. Chapter 85. The wedding banquet went smoothly. Even Madame D, who everyone thought would definitely make trouble this time, did not make any trouble. However, she was nowhere to be seen. It was said that she was sick. Of course, not many people believed the so-called sick. Some well-informed people said that she was not sick but grounded. Qin Wanru and old grandma went to Jingxin Monastery again after Shui Rulin recognized her. Old grandma still needed to have a good rest, so Qin Wanru volunteered to serve her. Everything in the mansion would be managed by Shui Rulin in the future. There were not many coachmen in the mansion. This time, almost all of them got into trouble, so they were replaced. When Qin Wanru went up the mountain, she brought more servant girls with her. Qin Yu still accompanied her, and there was also the newly recruited second-class servant girl Chu Lu and 2 other little servant girls. The number of servants was much more than last time. When they arrived at Jingxin Monastery, they still lived in the fragrant room that they lived in last time. Originally, they only planned to go down the mountain to preside over the wedding of General's mansion. Old grandma and Qin Wanru left many things in Jingxin Monastery. This time, they didn't need to spend much effort to move more luggage. In the next half-month, Qin Wanru lived on the mountain comfortably. Old grandma's health was getting better day by day, and Qin Wanru's medical skills were also improving by leaps and bounds. With the foundation of the last life, she could almost learn medicine at a rapid speed. Her acupuncture skills were also very fast, which made Mingqiu Nun more and more exclaim that she had accepted the right disciple. She was indeed a good seedling to learn medicine. Moreover, she was very interested in medical skills. When there were people who went up the mountain to seek medical treatment from the master of Jingxin Monastery, Qin Wanru also listened to the master of Jingxin Monastery treat them in the room beside. Miss Chu Lu secretly went to see someone again. Under the lamp, Qin Wanru was seriously reading a medical book. Qin Yu came in and reported in a low voice. How many times has it been? Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the shadow of the lamp in front of her and asked. Qin Yu understood and said, "It has been the third time. I have hinted to her several times under the instruction of Mississippi. Since that's the case, bring him over." A trace of coldness flashed in Qin Wanru's eyes. Even Madame D did not expect the appearance of Chu Lu, so she tried to take Chu Lu away from her several times. However, Madame D could not protect herself now, so it was difficult for her to take care of Chu Lu. Qin Yu nodded and soon brought Chu Lu over. As soon as Chu Lu entered the door, she knelt down in front of Qin Wanru. "Second Miss, I just miss my mother. I didn't do anything wrong." Then she burst into tears. "I didn't do anything else. Please forgive me, Second Mississippi. Chu Lu, I told you last time that once you entered the General's mansion, you are a member of the General's mansion. You bought your body to enter the General's mansion, so from now on, you are no longer related to the past. Even if you want to see her, you have to report to the young mistress and get her permission before you can see her. But you secretly go to see her again and again. Have you ever put the young mistress in your eyes?" Qin Yu scolded her harshly. "Of course I listened to you wholeheartedly, but my mother was sick. My father knew that I was in Jingxin Monastery and specially came up the mountain to tell me about my mother's condition. Other than that, I didn't do anything else." Chu Lu was unconvinced and tried to defend herself. She reached out to wipe her tears, looking extremely wronged. Not only did she feel wronged, but she was also a little angry. She felt that Qin Wanru was a little unreasonable. "Your mother was sick, but your father didn't go to the General's mansion to find her, but came to Jingxin Monastery? Your father is really resourceful." Qin Wanru reached out to pick up the teacup beside her, and took a sip of tea foam. Chu Lu looked a little flustered. She did not expect that Qin Wanru would suddenly jump out of the original topic and ask such a question. "But maybe it was someone in the mansion who told my father. You just entered the General's mansion, so you don't know many people. Only people in your garden know you. When I left, I specifically told Nanny you not to spread the news that you followed me to Jingxin Monastery, so how did your father know about you?" Qin Wanru's eyes flashed a trace of darkness, and her eyes fell on Chu Lu with indescribable majesty and fierceness. "I don't know. I heard that your father found you on the second day after you went up the mountain. It's so fast. If no one told him, he couldn't have found you. Chu Lu, tell me what your father wants you to do and who asked him to find you?" Qin Wanru asked with a cold look. Chu Lu looked at Qin Wanru. A pair of childish little face was tight, and the coldness in her eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Chu Li's eyes moved, and she dared not to look at Qin Wanru's eyes again. She stuttered and explained, "I don't know, but maybe it was a coincidence. My mother was sick, and my father came to Jingxin Monastery to fulfill the vow for my mother, so we happened to meet." "Fulfill the vow for your mother?" Qin Wanru sneered, and the teacup in her hand fell heavily on the table, and the table shook twice, making a sharp and ear-piercing sound. "Chu Lu, do you think that I'm still young and ignorant, so I'm easy to fool? Chu Lu, you're now a member of the General's mansion, and if I'm not satisfied with you, I have every reason to sell you. Now, it's my mother who is in charge of the mansion, not Madam. Don't you know that?" Qin Wanru's voice was not loud, with the naivety of a girl of her age, but it fell on Chu Li's ears with a sense of coldness, and Chu Li's legs became weak, and she knelt on the ground. "Qin Yu, find old Maidya to sell her tomorrow, and sell her far away. I don't want to see her in Jiangzhou at all," Qin Wanru ordered coldly. With Qin Wanru's words, it meant that no one in Jiangzhou Prefecture would buy Chu Lu, and Chu Lu and her parents would never see each other again. "Yes, miss, I'll ask someone to go down the mountain to find old Maidya tomorrow." Qin Yu nodded, and looked at Chu Lu with contempt, without any intention to protect Chu Lu. Second miss, I'll tell you everything, please forgive me." Second Mississippi, hearing that Qin Wanru was serious this time, Chu Lu really panicked this time, and reached out to hug Qin Wanru's leg, but was pushed away by Qin Yu, and the other two servant girls came over to pull her down. Chu Lu struggled desperately. Miss, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything, please let me go. Qin Wanru seemed not to hear her words, or maybe she didn't care about her words at all, and picked up the medical book on the table to read, as if she didn't care about what Chu Lu said at all. Miss, my father got the news from Madame D. Miss, it's really Madame D. Chu Lu originally wanted to pretend, but seeing that Qin Wanru didn't care at all, she anxiously hugged the door frame and shouted, not daring to hide anything. Pull her back. Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows coldly, and her eyes fell on Chu Lu calmly again. Looking at Qin Wanru, who was so calm, Chu Lu didn't dare to hide anything. Miss, it's really Madame D who asked my father to come. My mother is really sick, madam. Madame D asked someone to send money to my father, and told him that I'm in Jingxin Monastery and also asked you to stare at me? Qin Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes became colder. Chu Lu was so scared just now, and when she heard Qin Wanru's question, she immediately lowered her head and admitted it. Asked you to stare at me for what? Qin Wanru slightly raised her eyebrows and asked calmly. That is, if there's anything wrong, you must tell my father early, and then let my father pass it on to Madame D. What did you find in the past few times? Your father came to see you again and again? Qin Wanru asked. I didn't find anything, and I just wanted to ask about my mother's health, so I asked my father to go up the mountain several times when he was free. Miss, please believe me, I really didn't say anything. Every time when my father went to report, Madame didn't say anything. Chu Lu shook her head in panic, and she really didn't find anything. In addition to serving old grandma, Qin Wanru went to the master of Jingxin Monastery to meditate. Every time you asked your father to come, your father went to report to Madame? Qin Wanru asked. Yes, every time my father saw me, he must go to see Madame. This was originally Madame's order, and Madame paid money to cure my mother. Chu Li's voice became lower and lower, and her head followed. Qin Wanru frowned, and she knew that Chu Lu wouldn't find out anything, but why did Madame D pay so much attention to it? There was a very strange feeling, and she couldn't figure out Madame D's intention at the moment. She and Madame D were already standing on the opposite side, and both father and grandmother already knew about this. If Madame D wanted to deal with her in the future, it was really worthless to only rely on the hearsay of some servant girls. But she just did this thing seriously, and Qing Shui in the mansion didn't do anything unusual, but Chu Lu, who was originally not suspicious, just kept getting into trouble, and it was really inexplicable. From the information that she inquired before, she also knew that Chu Li's appearance was an accident, and it was an accident that even Qin Yuru and Madame D didn't expect. Now Madame D was crazy about Chu Lu. Did it mean that she really wanted to get information about her from Chu Lu? A second-class servant girl who just entered the mansion was no different from an ordinary servant girl. How could she know anything valuable? Or it was not only Chu Lu, but also Chu Li's family? She faintly felt that this matter must be related to her. Madame D wouldn't be so free, so there must be something important, and it was something that Madame D had to pay attention to. Even if Madame D was now grounded, this matter couldn't be delayed. When will your father go up the mountain next time? Qin Wanru asked coldly, and her eyes became deep where no one could see. Maybe she should think differently, and this matter should not be related to Chu Lu, but Chu Li's family. Chapter 86. 3 days passed quickly. When Qin Wanru came back from Madame Dowager's yard, she saw Chu Lu standing outside her yard with a middle-aged man. Seeing her coming back, Chu Lu hurried forward. Miss, this is my father. The middle-aged man came forward and bowed to Qin Wanru. Second miss. I am Chu Li's father. Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the middle-aged man, who was in his 30s or 40s. He was dressed like an ordinary villager, with his head lowered, and his face could not be seen clearly. However, he was extremely tall, even taller than the average villager. Although he lowered his head, he was not flustered in his behavior. Are you from the capital city? Qin Wanru looked him up and down and asked calmly. Yes, I am from the capital city. The middle-aged man nodded and said, Why did you come to Jiangzhou? Qin Wanru looked at him coldly. I came to Jiangzhou to find someone. I heard that he appeared in Jiangzhou. The middle-aged man heard the question and said quickly, You and your wife are both from the capital city? Qin Wanru asked again. We are. The middle-aged man did not hide it. Madam asked your daughter to keep an eye on me and report to her about me? There was no doubt in these words, so Qin Wanru simply avoided these words and asked directly, her eyes shining on the man. Yes. The middle-aged man lowered his head even more. Do you know that if I punish your whole family, it will be nothing in Jiangzhou? Qin Wanru smiled coldly and said with a childish voice, Ningyuan Army General's mansion is in Jiangzhou. If you want to punish a family, even if you want to kill them, it will be nothing. If it was in the capital city, Qin Huaiyong was indeed nothing. His official rank was not high, and his official position was not high. There were many high-ranking officials in the capital city who could suppress him. But here in Jiangzhou, Qin Huaiyong, who had the military power, could deal with a few people without anyone knowing. Second miss, I really didn't say anything about you. Madam didn't ask much about you either. The middle-aged man panicked and could not stand still. He pulled Chu Lu to kneel down and said anxiously. He had been in Jiangzhou for so many years, of course, he knew that Qin Wanru's words were not to scare him. If she didn't say anything about me, then what did Madam say? Why do I always ask you to report to me? But I don't know what I've done to make you have so many things to report to Madam. Qin Wanru said coldly. This lowly one. The middle-aged man hesitated and lowered his head. Tell me. Qin Wanru glanced at the middle-aged man and increased the pressure in her heart unhurriedly. She had threatened him just now. If he was smart, he would certainly know what to do. Madam is asking me why I came to Jiangzhou. The middle-aged man did not look stupid. He hesitated for a moment and then said. Although his words were vague, Qin Wanru still heard something and showed a trace of seriousness on her face. Your business? What business do you have? You are asking me who I am looking for in Jiangzhou. Have you found him? Also, there are some other trivial matters. The middle-aged man's forehead was covered with sweat. He originally thought that she was just a young lady who was not sensible. He did not expect that she would give him so much pressure. What she said was even more shocking. He dared not to say anything useful. However, there were some things that he would never say, whether it was Madame D or the second miss in front of him. The person you are looking for in Jiangzhou, is it related to Madame? Qin Wanru's expression did not change. She pondered for a moment and asked. It has nothing to do with Madame. The person I am looking for in Jiangzhou has nothing to do with Madame. I don't know why Madame cares so much about my business. The middle-aged man was actually very confused. The Madam of General's mansion was inexplicably interested in his family's business. Although she seemed to be interested in second Miss Qin's business, the middle-aged man was also a smart man. He had already found some clues from Madame D's words. As for Madame D's question, he had been delaying or pretending not to understand and answering vaguely. However, according to his feeling, this second miss who suddenly appeared seemed to be a difficult person to deal with. Can you talk about your business? Qin Wanru did not beat around the bush and came straight to the point. The middle-aged man felt that the sweat on his forehead increased. Although this miss grew up in Jiangzhou, she was actually not a miss from a big aristocratic family. However, she was so generous and her questions were all on point. This matter, please forgive me for not telling you all. It is related to some important family affairs of mine. The middle-aged man answered cautiously, This is my personal business and it has nothing to do with others. Why does Madam want to know? Although he answered cautiously, his words were firm. Qin Wanru knew that he would not tell the truth, so she simply changed the topic. I don't know either. The middle-aged man shook his head. He really did not know what this matter had to do with Madame D. This matter had nothing to do with Madame D. Could it be related to Madame? Qin Wanru reminded him. She rolled her watery eyes and there was a bit of clarity in them. The person you are looking for, could it be related to Madame? No, impossible. The middle-aged man was stunned and hurriedly shook his head. Why is it impossible? Qin Wanru was curious. This is not possible. It is impossible. It is impossible. The middle-aged man kept shaking his head. In fact, I am looking for two people, not just one person. But Madam is alone, and the miss of Duke Yong's mansion can't be related to my matter. Because he was anxious, the middle-aged man explained again. The miss of Duke Yong's mansion? Qin Wanru playfully bit her pink cherry lips. The middle-aged man's face changed dramatically, and his hands, which were put aside, trembled slightly. You actually know that Madam is the miss of Duke Yong's mansion. In Jiangzhou, most people only know that Madam is a miss from an aristocratic family in the capital city, but they don't know which aristocratic family she is from. You are a farmer, but you are so knowledgeable and clearly know Madam's origin. Have you seen Madam before? I have not seen Madam before. The middle-aged man was a little flustered. Weren't you in the capital city before? Didn't you see Madam when you went out? Qin Wanru stared at the middle-aged man and said coldly. I was just a nobody at that time. How could I have seen Countess Yong? The middle-aged man shook his hands anxiously. But Madam recognized you. Qin Wanru smiled slightly, and her voice was cold and firm. How could it be impossible? I am just a servant. How could Madam recognize me? The middle-aged man's face changed dramatically, and he stammered. When he finished speaking, his face changed dramatically. He was really panicked when he said something wrong. So, which mansion are you a servant? Qin Wanru immediately caught the loophole in his words and asked coldly. Then her voice became harsh. Are you an escaped slave from an aristocratic family in the capital city? If he was an escaped slave, he would be punished on his face and sent to exile after being caught. No, I am not an escaped slave. I am really looking for someone, for our master. This matter is known by the people in our mansion. The middle-aged man could not hide his panic. He gritted his teeth and had to say a few more words. You are looking for your master? You haven't found him for so many years? I heard from Chu Lu that you have been in Jiangzhou for a long time. Are you not going to go back after so many years without any news? Qin Wanru asked one sentence after another. She had asked Chu Lu before. They had been in Jiangzhou Prefecture for many years. For so many years, they could not find their master, but they did not go back. Instead, they settled down in Jiangzhou. She had never heard of such a thing. Is it that you have found your master, but you hurt him, so you dare not go back to the mansion? Qin Wanru smiled gently. But the meaning in her words made the confident middle-aged man's face suddenly turn as pale as snow. If this crime was really carried out, he would have no way to live. Second, Miss Qin, how could I hurt our master? If I really hurt our master, I will be struck by lightning. But our master has been missing for so many years. When I went out to look for him, the old master said that he would not let me go back until he was found. Now the master has not been found, and the old master is also gone. I don't know what to do. The middle-aged man sobbed and cried. He wiped his tears while crying. Such a big man kneeling on the ground and crying, and thinking of what he said, it was really pitiful. Qin Yu, who was standing aside, felt pity for him. Our master and the miss of Duke Yong's mansion did meet several times. I followed our master at that time. Maybe Madam recognized me, so she inquired about our master. But I have been in Jiangzhou for so many years, and I have not found our master. Even if I want to say something, I can't say anything. Even if Madam D asks me again, I can only say the same words. The middle-aged man continued. This time, he did not hide anything. Except the name of his master, he almost told her everything. This kind of thing could be regarded as the secret of a big family, but it had nothing to do with others. Qin Wanru was just a weak girl in the boudoir. It was not good for her to know this kind of thing, and it would even cause trouble and gossip. Does Madam really want to know so much? Qin Wanru said slowly. It seems so. I don't know why Madam is so persistent. Even if she knows, so what? What's more, now the old master is gone, and no one will worry about the little master. The middle-aged man wiped his tears and said bitterly, Chapter 87. The meaning of these words made the kneeling father and daughter stunned for a moment, but then the middle-aged man shook his head and half raised his head. Second Miss Qin, you are a kind person. Chulu has told me that you are a good person. Even if you know that my family is coerced by Madam, you don't blame Chulu. Chulu is good with Second Mississippi. Second Miss, I want to follow you. Chulu also raised her tearful face and cried. Isn't it good to stay together as a family? Qin Wanru looked at the middle-aged man with unclear eyes. His face looked very ordinary and would not be conspicuous in the crowd. Second Miss, on one hand, I have to look for Master, on the other hand, I have to work. My wife is sick, and I can't support so many children. Originally, I planned to buy them out one by one. When I find Master and have money, I will see if Master can bestow them back to me. The middle-aged man said bitterly. It could be seen that what he said was true, and his eyes turned red. The meaning of these words was both loyalty to his master and love for his daughter. But thinking of his current situation, anyone who heard it would feel that this was the only way. He was a servant. Even if he brought money to find his master, he had been looking for 10 years. How could he have money? He had no choice but to sell his daughter to survive. If they stayed together, no one in the family could survive. If they sold their daughter to a good family, they could live well. Qin Yu, give him 10 taels of silver. Qin Wanru looked at the middle-aged man's face deeply and said after a moment of silence. Yes, miss. Qin Yu hurried back to the room to get the silver. Take the silver and move. Don't let Madam find you again. As for Chulu, you can stay. But I don't keep idle people or disloyal people around me. Qin Wanru's deep eyes fell on Chulu. If you can't do it, you'd better go down the mountain with me. The silver can be my support. I am willing to follow you. I will follow you in the future. Chulu was smart and said with tears in her eyes. She was really grateful to Qin Wanru. In fact, she didn't know what happened to her father. Seeing that Qin Wanru didn't blame her and even asked Qin Yu to give her money, she felt sad and sad. She really wanted to show her loyalty to Qin Wanru. She hadn't been in the mansion for a long time, so she didn't have much contact with Qin Wanru. She couldn't say that she had any feelings for Qin Wanru, but she was really moved at this time. After that, he kowtowed heavily to Qin Wanru 3 times, and each kowtow was made with sincerity. Second Miss, don't worry. I'll move after I go back. I won't let Madam find me again. From now on, Chulu will follow you. The middle-aged man wiped his tears and said decisively. Qin Yu came out from the inner room, gave the silver to Chu Li's father, and then stepped aside. How can you avoid the madam's inquiries? In Jiangzhou, the madam's words are still very important. Qin Wanru frowned and asked. Second Miss, don't worry. I heard that the madam of the mansion seems to be on bad terms with the general recently. She is busy taking care of herself and doesn't have much time to take care of me. I'll move after I go back and won't tell the neighbors. She won't find me in a short time. I'm just worried about Chulu. Chu Li's father's thought was very clear, but he hesitated when talking about Chulu. He could avoid Madame D, but Chulu who stayed in the general's mansion couldn't avoid Madame D. I will protect my woman. As long as she is really loyal, I won't let anyone bully her. Qin Wanru said gently, and her eyes fell on Chu Li's father thoughtfully. He was a very smart person. He could actually see the current situation of Madame D in the general's mansion. Qin Wanru believed that the people in the mansion were not talkative people. They would not talk about Madame D with a random person. He was careful to find out. He came to her mansion 3 times and could find out the situation of the master of the inner court. This person was not simple. Thank you so much, Second Mississippi. I'll leave now. Chu Li's father stood up and wiped his tears. He looked up at Qin Wanru for the first time. After a short pause, he looked at Chu Lu reluctantly and then left sadly. He didn't even know if he could see her again. Chu Lu looked at his back sadly and sobbed uncontrollably. Go and see your father off. Qin Wanru said as she turned and walked inside. Chu Lu was stunned for a moment, and then she was overjoyed. She kowtowed to Qin Wanru heavily, stood up and chased after her father. Miss this? Qin Yu looked at her back and felt a little uneasy. She turned and followed Qin Wanru back to the courtyard. When they were in the room, Qin Yu made a new cup of tea for Qin Wanru. She stood aside and wanted to say something. Qin Wanru took a sip of tea and put it down. She looked at Qin Yu and asked with a smile, "Qin Yu, do you have anything to ask? Miss, can Chu be trusted in the future?" Qin Yu heard the question and asked hurriedly. "Temporarily put it in a place where it can be used, but we still need to check it carefully for a while." Qin Wanru thought for a moment and said, "Is what her father said true?" Qin Yu still had doubts. She thought Chu Lu was trustworthy. After all, she and her family were indebted to Chu Lu, but Qin Yu still didn't dare to take it lightly. It should be true. He is a loyal servant. After so many years, he is still looking for him. Qin Wanru sighed and said meaningfully, "He even doesn't care about his own daughter." He was a smart person and a very smart person at that. With just a few sentences, he knew what to say and how to say it to make people feel pity for him and not feel disgusted. If such a person was dedicated to doing some work, it would be impossible for him to not be able to raise his own child. However, he fell into such a situation now. She sighed but also felt that he was admirable. However, no matter how much she admired him, Qin Wanru wouldn't be a good person and let others plot against her. "Miss, you mean what he said is true? But who would be looking for him for so many years?" Qin Yu asked in surprise. "That master should be dead by now. Otherwise, it is impossible to find him for so long." Qin Wanru shook her head. In fact, she also felt strange, but this was the matter of others' mansion and had nothing to do with her. Madame D should be very concerned about this matter, and might even want to get Chu Lu to live with her and Qin Yuru. But she didn't expect that she would be the first one, so this person was sent to her. Therefore, she tried every means to make her drive her out or not let her stay with her. After that, she tried to find an excuse to ask Chu Li's father about something, which should be about his master. However, Chu Li's father was smart. He not only didn't reveal anything, but also attracted her attention. This matter had nothing to do with her, but she had an indescribable wonderful feeling. Somehow, she felt pity for this father and daughter. Chu Li came back very quickly. She came back while wiping her tears. After coming back, she entered the room and kowtowed to Qin Wanru 3 times. Qin Wanru asked Qin Yu to help her up. "Do you know anything about your father?" Qin Wanru took the medical book and asked casually while reading. "This servant doesn't know about father's matters. Father has never mentioned it to this servant's sisters. This servant didn't expect father to have such a secret. This servant used to hate father, thinking that he couldn't be a good father." Chu Li cried. She really didn't know anything about her father before, so she always felt that her father was useless. "Your father is a loyal servant." Qin Wanru sighed and didn't continue. "Go and wash your face." "Yes, miss." Chu Li nodded and said respectfully. Just now, her father repeatedly told her that since she had entered Ningyuan Army General's mansion and was protected by Second Miss Qin, she must be loyal to Second Miss Qin and remember not to betray her master. Qin Yu took Chu Li to wash. Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the book, but she felt that the words in front of her seemed to jump away by themselves. The moment when Chu Li's father's eyes fell on her face flashed in her mind. He paused for a moment. It was a very strange feeling. It seemed that at that moment, the middle-aged man was a little confused, but this confusion soon floated away. Did she see it wrong or did she misunderstand? She always felt that this look was quite meaningful. Her heart also thumped at that time, as if something slipped through her heart, but then it was gone. She reached out and rubbed her forehead. She always felt that some things in the last life were fragmented. In a daze, she seemed to be able to grasp something instinctively, but it seemed that she couldn't grasp anything at the moment. In the next few days, Qin Wanru still lived as usual, but Chu Li gradually became more and more important. Qin Wanru also asked her to run errands for some things that she didn't want to be known by others. When she really used Chu Lu, she found that Chu Lu was smart and even decisive sometimes. Although she was a second-class servant girl, she didn't have stage fright in her behavior. This was a surprise for Qin Wanru. She now had too few people she could use, but she didn't dare to use people in the mansion at ease because she hadn't been in contact with them. Xiao Xuanzi stopped Chu Lu when she went to get the food basket. Chu Lu originally thought that he was a little lecher and didn't dare to bring him to Qin Wanru, but Xiao Xuanzi stopped her so she could only bring him to Qin Yu. When Qin Yu saw it was Xiao Xuanzi, she pulled Xiao Xuanzi to the side to talk. After squeezing in the water tank once, they could be regarded as old acquaintances. Xiao Xuanzi, why do you come to our miss? Qin Yu looked around and stopped to ask. Miss had told her not to let others know the existence of Xiao Xuanzi, so Qin Yu was very careful. Our master is sick. Xiao Xuanzi was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. When he pulled Qin Yu, it was like seeing a family member. His eyes turned red, and he reached out to pull her inside again. Isn't your prince always sick? Qin Yu heard it was about the young prince, so she immediately answered carefully. In her view, he looked so pale, so naturally he had always been sick. This time is more serious because he was too tired that time, and it happened on the day when Ningyuan army general got married. Xiao Xuanzi was afraid that Qin Yu didn't understand, so he explained in more detail. What happened that day? Qin Yu didn't understand. That, our master was even more sick that day, but he didn't want to take medicine now, so he wanted to ask second Miss Qin to go and have a look. Xiao Xuanzi said anxiously. My miss doesn't know how to treat a patient. Qin Yu said nervously, for fear that the fact that her miss knew how to treat a patient would be leaked out. With such a high status, if something happened, her miss couldn't afford it. I didn't ask your miss to treat a patient for our master, but I asked your miss to persuade our master. I think our master has a good relationship with your miss. Xiao Xuanzi clenched his fist, looked around, and whispered to Qin Yu's ear. Chapter 88. What? Your prince is so sick? Qin Yu panicked. He hasn't woken up yet. If something happened to our prince, it would be terrible. Xiao Xuanzi stamped his feet anxiously. Wait a minute, I'll go to find my miss right away. Qin Yu didn't dare to delay and said hurriedly. She asked Xiao Xuanzi to wait here and turned back to go out. Seeing her face changed, Chu Li didn't dare to ask more. Miss, Xiao Xuanzi's master is sick and hasn't eaten for a day. When Qin Yu came in, Qin Wanru was picking out pieces of well-clipped maple leaves from the book. She planned to use them to make maple leaf toothpicks. Hearing what Qin Yu said, the maple leaf in her hand, which was trimming, was immediately pierced by the scissors. What happened? Qin Wanru raised her head. I don't know. Xiao Xuanzi came to ask you to have a look. Qin Yu said, let's go and have a look. Qin Wanru put down the scissors and maple leaves, lifted the hem of her dress and walked out. She met Chu Lu who was carrying a food basket. Miss, are you still going out? Chu Lu put down the food basket and asked. I'll talk to Qin Yu and eat later. Clean up the maple leaves in the room. Qin Wanru said casually. Yes, miss. Chu Lu answered and stepped aside to make way for Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru hurried out and Qin Yu ran quickly to catch up with her. She led the way in front and soon found Xiao Xuanzi with Qin Wanru. Second Miss Qin. Xiao Xuanzi was so excited that he almost cried when he saw Qin Wanru. Let's go and have a look at your master. Qin Wanru whispered. If Chu Luchen really had an accident in Jiangzhou, the whole Jiangzhou would be in trouble. With his identity, the one who was high up in the capital city, he had to do something more high-profile to make up for it. This situation might be equal to assassinating the king and killing the emperor. Otherwise, he couldn't convince the people in the world and he might even be criticized in the history books. If it weren't for his young age, he would be the one sitting on the throne right now. Strictly speaking, he was the legitimate crown prince. It was also because of this reason that even though the current emperor had several princes, none of them were crowned as crown prince. The courtiers all adopted a wait-and-see attitude. If something happened to Chu Luchen at this time, the whole country would be in turmoil if the emperor didn't push out a few scapegoats. The scapegoats would be the officials in Jiangzhou, and Qin Huaiyong would bear the brunt. The yard was still the same yard, but the big lounge chair outside was gone. Xiao Xuanzi took Qin Wanru into the house, turned the 9-fold screen, and entered the inner room. Seeing Chu Luchen lying on the bed with a pale face, Qin Wanru panicked a little. Nothing must happen to him. If something were to happen to him, Qin Huaiyong would definitely be implicated. It was even possible that his entire clan would be exterminated. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and reached out to hold his hand that was outside the quilt. She calmed herself down and carefully felt his pulse. His pulse was heavy and heavy, as if it was difficult to move even an inch. Qin Wanru knew he was not well. Qin Wanru opened her eyes and saw a bowl of medicine on the table beside her. The medicine was cold, without any heat. Why did you give your master such a cold medicine? Qin Wanru reached out and touched the bowl of medicine. As expected, it was cold, and her face couldn't help but turn pale. Second miss, it's my master who refused to drink the medicine. The medicine was left here to cool down. The stove has been boiling new medicine. I'll go and get a bowl of hot medicine right now. Xiao Xuanzi took the bowl of medicine and cried, since this morning, my master refused to drink medicine and couldn't eat. Who prescribed this medicine? Qin Wanru frowned tightly. So it was not that the medicine was not good, but Chu Luchen didn't intend to drink it. It was prescribed by the master of Jingxin Monastery. It's quite suitable to use, but I just don't want to drink it. Xiao Xuanzi tried all kinds of methods, but Chu Luchen just ignored him. In desperation, he thought of Qin Wanru. In Jiangzhou, only the second Miss Qin had an unusual relationship with his master. Xiao Xuanzi was desperate to turn to any doctor he could find. You go and get another bowl of medicine. Hearing that it was prescribed by the master of Jingxin Monastery, Qin Wanru approved of it. Sometimes when she saw the master of Jingxin Monastery use medicine, although she felt that it was not as delicate as her Mingqiu nun, it was good in general. Yes, I'll go and get it right now. Xiao Xuanzi retreated. Qin Wanru held Chu Liuchen's hand again. Chu Liuchen's hand was so big that he could almost hold both of her hands when he stretched it out. Looking at Chu Liuchen's tightly closed eyes, Qin Wanru stretched out her sharp nails and pinched Chu Liuchen's thumb and index finger hard without any hesitation. She used a lot of strength. The person on the bed screamed in pain, and his long eyelashes fluttered twice. Chu Luchen opened his eyes, and there was a chill in his light brown eyes, a kind of coldness that kept people thousands of miles away. He fixed his eyes on Qin Wanru, without any warmth or expression. Seeing his expression, Qin Yu was so scared that she hurriedly lowered her head and felt anxious. Chu Luchen was so sick that he could only lie on the bed, but he still gave people a chill and panic from the spine. You need to take medicine when you are sick. If you don't take medicine, how can you get well? Qin Wanru saw a small table beside the bed, took it and sat down, and then put his hand down. Chu Luchen looked at Qin Wanru coldly, and his thin lips were tightly pressed, without a trace of blood. The coldness that seemed to have no vitality was more strange than the coldness in the past, which made people feel numb all over, and the temperature of the whole room dropped by a few degrees. Xiao Xuanzi will bring the medicine in a moment. Take a little, and then take some medicine before you eat. Qin Wanru seemed not to see Chu Liuchen's expressionless face and gloomy eyes. She reached out to hold his wrist and felt his pulse. Just like before, he didn't faint at all, but just didn't want to open his eyes. I don't want to eat it. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on Qin Wanru coldly, and this atmosphere made Qin Yu lower her head more and more, not daring to move. Why don't you want to eat it? Qin Wanru opened her eyes and raised her smiling face. Her cheeks were rosy, which made her small white face more attractive. The corners of her eyes were slightly raised, showing a kind of natural charm. However, she had not grown up yet, so she still looked a little childish and not obviously charming. Your skin color is so good. Chu Luchen whispered. No one expected that he suddenly raised his hand and touched Qin Wanru's little face. The soft and warm feeling of the bottom of his hand was very comfortable and lively, which made him stunned for a moment. His long eyelashes fluttered twice, and it seemed that he couldn't come back to his senses. Qin Wanru didn't notice that he would reach out to pinch her face, and looked at him in astonishment. She saw that his expressionless face gradually became lazy under her eyes, and his delicate and exquisite facial features immediately became vivid. The spirit of the ink landscape painting was slowly injected into the beautiful young man's lifeless face. Yes, that kind of expressionless face was a kind of lifeless face. It's really good, Chu Luchan said. He stretched out his hand again, and under Qin Wanru's stunned eyes, he slightly squinted and pinched Qin Wanru again, and the smile on his pale lips became more obvious. Qin Wanru slapped his hand hard. She could tell that Chu Luchan touched her unconsciously last time, but this time he did it on purpose. She used a lot of strength this time, but she didn't hit Chu Liuchen's hand. His hand actually avoided her, and Chu Luchan showed a young man's tired expression on his face. "Sir, you finally woke up, sir?" Xiao Xuanzi came in with a bowl of hot medicine in his hand. Seeing the vivid expression on Chu Liuchen's face, he was so excited that his tears were about to fall, and the bowl in his hand almost fell down. "I don't take medicine." Chu Luchan turned around and turned his face inside. "Sir, if you don't take medicine, how can you get better?" Xiao Xuanzi began to persuade him earnestly again, and put the medicine on the table with a face full of worry. "Annoying, go down." Chu Luchan was not happy, and said coldly with his back facing them. "Sir." Xiao Xuanzi's voice was long, and he was really anxious. He didn't take medicine for a day, and his body seemed to be getting worse, which made him anxious. "Sir, go down. Do you want to make me angry?" Chu Liuchen's voice was not only cold, but also a little bit angry, which immediately interrupted Xiao Xuanzi's words. "Sir." Xiao Xuanzi was so anxious that his eyes turned red. Although he said, "Sir," in a very low voice to Chu Luchan, he looked at Qin Wanru with a face full of hope. "Xiao Xuanzi, Qin Yu, you go down first." Qin Wanru thought for a while and waved her hand. "Miss." Xiao Xuanzi breathed a sigh of relief, but Qin Yu panicked. "I'm fine, you go down with Xiao Xuanzi." Qin Wanru took a deep breath and thought it was better to let Qin Yu go down with Xiao Xuanzi. What she would do later might not make Chu Luchan happy, and might even make him angry. She was afraid that Chu Luchan might vent his anger on Qin Yu when he was angry. "Yes, miss." Seeing that Qin Wanru insisted, Qin Yu had to leave, and turned to walk out of the room. When she reached the door, she looked inside worriedly, because she was still worried. Qin Wanru waved to her again, and Qin Yu retreated to the outer room. "Child, why don't you want to take the medicine? There must be a reason, right?" After everyone in the room left, Qin Wanru wrapped the handkerchief in her hand, stood up, picked up the bowl of medicine from the table, walked to the bed and sat down again. She blew the medicine in her hand, squinted at the arrogant boy on the bed and asked, "It's none of your business." Chu Luchan sneered unhappily, and his voice was full of anger. "I don't want to care about it, but I have something to ask you, child. If you just leave like this, I have no place to ask others to help me." Qin Wanru frowned and said. She pursed her pink lips and looked a little embarrassed. "It's related to Empress Dowager's illness. I don't feel at ease to let others do it, and I'm afraid that others will take my credit. It's really difficult." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.